there is an intro. Actually, say something real quick. Test your levels.
Test.
Perfect. Yeah, it's like an 18-second intro. It's playing now, and people can kind of hear us, but not really. And once that's over, I just I start going, "Hey, it's the show," and I'll do that like pretty much right about now.
Oh, you know what? Can I grab a drink real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. That's a good way to start the show. Hey, everybody. This is the CrunchCast number 28. I'm Chris Holden, and our guest this week is Ryan James Smith, a infamous polycount user. I'm going to wait for him to come back to say his name. But as always, you can check us out on crunchstudios.com. You can subscribe on YouTube. We've got it on Vimeo. We've got MP3s. Follow us on Twitter. It's all there. We got the info. So if you like RSS feeds of audio of people talking about video games on a very, very technical level, then this is the show for you. Anyway, yeah, he's back. So Ryan's here. I wanted to wait till I said this to make sure I got it right. On Polycount, it's Virtuosic?
Yeah, Virtuosic.
I did it right. Nice.
Yeah, you pronounced it right. I think in my signature I used to have a pronunciation key on like actually how to say it, because of my email, it's virtuosicrjs@gmail.com. Every time I have to give that information to somebody or like write it down on an application or some kind of form, they're always like, Virtuosis.
Yeah, nice.
They fuck the word up like crazy, and it's so annoying. And in hindsight, I probably should have chosen a different alias. But
well, it's one of those things. A long, wacky alias that's maybe a word that people don't get as well, or a made-up word. Or if it has even like weird characters or numbers for vowels or whatever, that can make it very difficult for people to contact you. Just a piece of advice, kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've done fine. But so anyway, yeah, Ryan has a website, RyanJamesSmith, one word, .carbonmade.com, where you can look at his pretty arts. And if you're a Polycount user and you look him up as Virtuosic, his signature has all kinds of wacky links, like obviously to your website. And you've done a lot of tutorials. And you have I'll just go ahead and throw out your YouTube channel. It's like the word crayon, but it's crayoin? Another weird word?
It's another fucked up word.
CrayLoen.
Yeah.
That's his YouTube channel.
It's a really old one.
Your YouTube channel is pretty much all, video tutorials for the most part?
Yeah.
I took a quick look at it earlier.
There's
and
a lot of demos.
Yeah.
There's some tutorials. I did a 5-part shader material in UDK for it, how to make like a master material, one that you could just instance and just plug things in, kind of like a material in Max. It's just good to go. You don't have to worry about any of that node stuff. I made a 5-part of that, tutorial on that. It was one of like the first ones I did, and as a result of that, like some people saw it on YouTube and they took interest in it, and about a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, I got contacted by a guy named Tyler Roundless who does the 3dmotive.com site. And he was like, we're going to start this website up in about 2 or 3 months, and we're looking for outsider contributions. Would you be interested in doing some training videos? And I was like, absolutely. I just kind of jumped on it, and I'd say the opportunity has been a really awesome one. But yeah, I like doing the tutorials. It's always good to like share information and give back, because I think there's so many people in this industry who wouldn't be where they are if they hadn't seen some amazing tutorial to help them, get into the whole 3D game. You know what I mean?
Hey, quick question: is your camera that you're using like a webcam, or is it part of your like laptop monitor?
It's a webcam.
Can you rotate it to your left just a little bit?
My left, this way?
The other way. Okay. There it is. Perfect, right there. Nice. Now I can center us up a little better. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Tutorials are one thing that's something that I've done for a long time. I had tutorials on a GeoCities site back in the late 90s for Quake. That's something I always thought was really useful, because for me, I've got this habit of, there's so many technical things out there to learn, that I'll figure out something, learn it, and the first thing I do is always write it down, because if I don't, I'm just going to forget it. So for me, I always document everything that I do anyway, for the most part. And writing tutorials for me is like, I can always go back to my site and look it up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to document things, and especially when you put them on the internet. I mean, they get stored in like Google Cache and shit like that. It's just like documenting it for everyone to see. And when people go and look at those tutorials that you posted, it helps get your name out there too, because I'm sure everyone who's done that has gotten like a random email from somebody that says, "Hey, I'm reading your tutorial. Thanks, it's awesome, but I have a question." Blah 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 blah, and it really creates a cool dynamic where you could interact with people and kind of just do some networking. Like, it's just free networking pretty much, and that is so key in the industry.
And one thing I just got to get it out of the way. It's got to be said about tutorials. If you just learned it that day that someone else showed you, or when people see the tutorial, if they're like, it's not really that good, then maybe, don't do tutorials so much. Because there is, now that it's so available for people to put things out there, there is a saturation of tutorials that aren't that great. And it makes it harder for people to learn, and it makes it worse for people that actually do put out good information to get the proper information out there. I don't want to discourage anybody, but if you're going to do something, make sure you show it to a very trusted professional friend. They can tell you for sure, yeah, this is good. But don't, I like to be very sure about mine. I've got an article I've kind of held off for a month because I've been sending it to friends, other professionals, saying, look, how does this look? How can I make this better? I want to make sure this shit is right and not just my stupid opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're designing a tutorial, absolutely. Like, don't make a shit tutorial that it's like just a repeat of something that you saw or is similar to something that you saw before.
Now, not to be a criticism of your tutorials, but yours, I would say, are more technical, so they can't be as wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, I was just about to say, there's a difference between designing a tutorial and documenting something cool, like something cool that you've discovered or that you started using. Yeah. I do this all the time.
Yeah. If you hit a control backspace when you got verts selected, their edges and max, they disappear and take the verts.
There's blog posts and then there's tutorials. Like, no one's gonna criticize you for writing a blog post or something. Like, I just wrote one on gradient mapping. Hundreds of people use gradient mapping. I just started using it more or less recently, and I was like, this is cool.
And what method of gradient mapping are you referring to? Are you referring to loading them to an image in Photoshop?
No, I'm talking about using... Well, it's actually a little bit more technical, what I've been doing, but there's an article for Left 4 Dead, or Valve did a PowerPoint presentation on Left 4 Dead 2 zombie variation. And they didn't have normal maps, and they had very little space for the horde. And we're not talking about the big angry guys or the ones that shoot the tongues out. We're talking about the common infected that you just are cannon fodder basically. They did this really cool thing with gradient mapping where they just had one texture with 6 different masks on it on all 3 channels, and in the alpha they stored what they called a luminance map, which is essentially a gradient mask. And they just loaded a gradient, just what a gradient is, just a range of colors in one line. Like
from black to white, or like a rainbow. Does it really matter, or is that just something that depends?
It could be anything. It's just like a gradient in Photoshop. And they textured entire zombies with just one line of 256 pixels, and that's all the texture space that they need to store is a luminance map, and then a 256 by 32 size image full of 32 gradients, and they would just use an index in the shader to choose which gradient they wanted, and right then and there you had I think they said over 24,000 zombie variations in that game for super cheap rendering costs and super low memory. And I think they had 10 times more variation than they did for Dead 1 with only 1.5 times as much memory. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. If you have a scene where you have to have a lot of the same objects but have different textures on them, and you don't want to load all those textures in, you could just use gradient mapping and design your luminance map to fit with certain color ranges. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. One of the things they did was they tinted skin and cloth they gave them different values in the gradient map. So the skin would be a value of 127 to 255, which is gray to white. in their luminance map, so that was one range. And then they could just mask that out in the shader if they wanted to use it independently from everything else. And the cloth was like 0 to 127, so it was from black to gray. And they would just do like these really cool tricks and store all these maps on one.
Yeah, I kind of just Googled up what you're talking about. I just threw in the Left 4 Dead gradient mapping and just kind of found some links. I'm kind of seeing what you're talking about, and it looks pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really complicated though on authoring the textures, but I mean you could see the final results right there in Photoshop, and they translate to the game almost perfectly. There might be some compression, discolorations and stuff like that, but for the most part it's absolutely perfect, and it's so little texture space. So I think it'd be a really cool challenge, or I just guess R&D opportunity to take this from characters and apply it to something more that an environment artist can use. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of test that out over the next week and see what happens. See if we can get some cool variation in color.
Well, it sounds really interesting, and I'm interested in it.
Yeah, me too. I love doing stuff like that. It's just it's nothing new, but I guess I'm trying to use it in a different way.
Well, the idea, I like it because I've worked on games before where, say, I was doing a bunch of different weapons for the game, and this is like a third-person RPG style game where they have like you say, okay, I got this axe, but then I can get the ice version of the axe, and I can get the fire version of the all those elemental versions.
And you don't want to get a different model, right?
Right. So basically, they were just
texture.
What I ended up doing was for the project, and I was just outsourcing on it. Is I came up with a basic system of gradient maps that you would look. Basically, you paint the texture black and white for all these things. For the most part, there were certain parts of it that were like, okay, this is a wood handle. It's always going to be wood. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, certain sections were masked off to just load gradient maps to, and I had gradient maps based on each element, and they weren't just like red to dark red to dark white. They were highly varied all the way through. Made it look very colorful. Made it look like there was different types of lighting coming in. Like you can do a black and white texture and set up a gradient map where like the farthest end, instead of being black, is kind of a lighter purple, and then that sinks into a slightly darker purple or blue, and then you kind of get a neutral color in the middle up to like a off-white, and then it gives you like a violet underlighting. You can fake lighting with gradient. Anyway, point is, they ended up using all these gradient maps. Yeah,
if you understand them, they're tough to understand at first.
It takes a little practice.
Yeah, because you have to substitute values in your head, right? Like you have to be like, okay, that's white, and now I know that on the right side of the gradient.
As you're painting it. Your idea is you want to paint from like, if you're painting in black and white, you want to make sure you have all your 0 to 100 values very clear and defined.
There's a lot of math and precision involved in it, and it's nothing that a casual artist would ever really want to do.
Right.
If I went to like,
I like it, but I've been painting in Photoshop for 15 plus years.
Yeah, like you need to do gradient maps. People be like, fuck off! Like I'm just gonna, I'll just take an image off of CG textures or out of my texture library.
I usually hand paint everything. I'm just like, here. Rust.
I'm in love with the idea of techniques like that, because it's taking something, it's spending a lot of time on the design end so you can get like way more variation.
Yeah, I would say like in the anecdote I used, having a technique like what you're talking about would have been fantastic, because the end result was we had to save one texture out for every variation, as opposed to what you're talking about would just start with the base of just the gradients and the color. The basic levels.
A lot of people use tint masking too, which is actually would be a more expensive way, depending on your texture, I guess. I mean, it might be a better idea to use gradient mapping or tint masking than gradient mapping. But I mean, Unreal Tournament. When I first got the Unreal Engine 3, I went and checked out Unreal Tournament 3 when that came out, and they used tint masking on like Team Red and Team Blue and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because I was thinking about it. Isn't it like that? Because it would have in Quake they had the lines in the palette.
Yeah,
and there was that one specific line that if you use this line of colors anywhere in your texture, those will be team colors that you could adjust in the menu. I'm kind of explaining it a bit more just because it helps the audience. I mean, I know it, you know it, but anyway, point is, that on a much more advanced level.
Yeah, and but the thing about tint masking is you only change one color. Like it's a over the entire space where you're changing the tint, you're just shifting hue. You know, you're not getting any kind of different levels or contrast like you can with gradient mapping, where I guess it's kind of hard for me to explain it, but it's just like taking a photo into Photoshop and just moving the hue and variation slider, and you see all the colors start to change a little bit.
Yeah, it gets all psychedelic and trippy.
Yeah, and
people are like, whoa, look at this slider, whoa.
Yeah, that's kind of what the gradient thing is, but in the tint masking would be like adjusting color. Well, I guess it wouldn't be color balance, but shit, it's like filling an entire layer in Photoshop with a color and then just changing the opacity. You know, you just get that brown look. If you fill the color in if you wanted it to be brown, it just changes everything to a brown, muddy look, and that's it. It just becomes like one color, very monochrome.
Oh,
that's what tint masking is like.
Yeah, it does do that. Yeah, huh?
Yeah, moving along.
No, you're right. That is kind of strange, but it's weird when you talk about technical features on them.
It's very hard to talk about it unless you have a demonstration of what it looks like, I guess. And for people who are just listening, we'll
probably do that at some point. But hey, let's talk about how did you even get into this industry? I know we spoke for just a second there about how doing tutorials helped getting you out there, because for you actually did good tutorials, so that's what helped you. But one of the things that I also liked about the work that you did was it was very technical, and I feel like somebody that displays a high level of technical knowledge seems to put a better foot forward. It tends to be like if you're trying to get into a job, they're trying to get in the job. If you have a bunch of work that's like, oh, there it is, a screen cap from Max, whatever, that's okay, but the guy's like, here's my full UDK scene. Okay, let's talk to this guy. Because at least he understands the troubles of making a scene look okay in a real-time environment. So being technical that you were, I think that helped really springboard you in there.
Yeah, well, knowing the software you're going to be working in, and then ultimately the engine that you're going to be working in is definitely a huge advantage, because you could demonstrate via your portfolio if you have if you have that knowledge and skill set to bring something from 3D Studio Max or Maya into an actual working engine and get it running in game. It just demonstrates that you have that knowledge. Like it certifies that you have that knowledge. You know what I mean? And if someone just hits F11 and takes a render out of Max, it's like, wow, you can 3D Studio Max, but do you have the capacity to learn these engines and get more technical with it? And you very may well be able to do that, but they don't know yet. It's not a certainty. You're not certified knowing that.
Right.
So automatically, right then and there, the person who's got their shit in engine has the upper hand over you, and that's something that can be a huge disadvantage to someone who doesn't know the engine.
I've explained that to people as problem-solving skills. If you display problem-solving skills of, okay, initially I've got the problem of make art look good enough to get job in some sort of art editor, like Max or Maya or whatever. But then you've got, okay, well, that's just Max. We're making video games here, buddy. This shit's got to run on the Xbox. Let's go. Chop, chop. So the person has also tackled the problem-solving skill of making that happen, like make it render in an engine. It doesn't really matter if you're using UDK, CryEngine, Unity, as long as it's one of these engines that people can just go, oh, there it is, I'm looking at it. Man, the value.
Yeah, my one of my good friends, Danny Pierce, he's a really awesome programmer. I know he went to school for programming and all that stuff, and he's been he's been trying to break into the game industry, but I don't think he wants to get in as a programmer, which is kind of strange because he definitely made more money, right? But he's been doing artwork, and because he comes from programming background, he understands that it's not really kind of like a wing it thing. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, and there's a lot of measurement and just design. And so I wouldn't say that he's got any background in art, but he's got this website. I think it's DannyPierce.com, and or something like that. And he's got like some really good art pieces up there that he's done recently. He's got like a phone booth, or not a phone booth, a gas pump, like an old 50s gas pump that's all dented up and banged up, and there's rust and stuff.
That's in everybody's portfolio.
Yeah, but he does it really well. And I see it, and I'm like, that's pro. And I'm like, holy shit, Danny, you can go pro if you want to do this. So I'm trying to get him. I'm like, fucking do all this shit. But he's got a lot of other shit on his portfolio too. Like he's got like a picture of like a logo he did a while back that has like a fluid sim in it. He's got like a zebra, like a ZBrushed rhino. And I was like, dude, take all that shit out of there.
It's funny when people have all this other stuff.
They have like all this unrelated stuff, and they'll have like a work in progress shot on there. And I'm like, you can't have that stuff on your portfolio because it might be hard for people to understand now, but it's not always quantity in your portfolio that's attractive. Because if you have one shit image in your portfolio, that brings everything else down.
Right. And I understand it's a whip. Yeah. You understand it's a whip. You've been making a whole bunch of whips. You said this thing has to go through God knows what kind of people to get the job. And they start looking at this and go, oh, what is this crap? They didn't even texture it, idiot. Stupid. It's not even done yet. That's all I remember. Those are the people we got to get through.
I want to also make the quick distinction that I'm not saying like if you have work in progresses in your portfolio and you already have a job to take those down because it doesn't really matter there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter there.
But if you're on the market, like if you're actively if you're looking for a job and you're in the process of sending your portfolio to people, take that shit out. Save it for later. I just want to make that distinction because I even tell people have work in progress is in my portfolio.
Oh, absolutely. I tell people if you're applying for a job, you should not only apply for that. You should forget what people say about your portfolio. Oh, I posted it and they gave me this information, so I did it like this. Yeah. If you're applying for a job that is a specific company that's looking for a specific style, I would even suggest people make, it's just an image gallery. It's not that hard. Shut up. Make a little portfolio that's specifically addressed to that studio. As in, if it's some game, the people that make Dead Space make a bunch of Dead Space looking stuff, like some sci-fi. I don't know. Maybe they've got other games in progress too. But I'm just saying, if you're applying to a studio, make the look. And if you're applying to another studio, you have a little different version. Maybe you have your environments that are all painted and fantasy. Then you have something that's all realistic. It just depends on the studio you're going to. But, once you've reached a certain point, like if you're like some guy who's like, oh, I'm just badass and I got a job, it doesn't really matter, And you also, to have multiple portfolios, boy, you got to have a bulk of work.
Yeah, it's kind of like I tell people, I don't really tell people that. I mean, that's a good way to go about it if you're really gung-ho about a certain studio.
Right.
But at the same time, it's almost like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people have the time to make a really extensive customized portfolio for a certain company. But if you do all one thing, like say you're trying to get a job for Bungie or 343 or whatever it's called, and you want to work on a Halo project, it might be a cool idea. It would be a risky idea to make your portfolio all Halo related.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it all Halo related.
Yeah, but remember, like if you do something like that,
8 variations of Master Chiefs.
Yeah, like if you do something like that, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And say a studio like who does like fantasy or like fantasy games like
Torchlight or Runic or
say like Runic came over and was like, oh hey, or like you had an opportunity to submit your portfolio to Runic, someone gave you a tip that they're looking for an environment artist, and you send them a bunch of sci-fi shit, they're going to be like, oh we don't do sci-fi.
They might think it's cool, or it's like a bunch of city environments. A lot of times studios aren't necessarily saying this guy would, he could probably do this game probably. what they would really like, the optimal employee is the guy when they look at their portfolio, they go, "Ooh, we want our game to look like that." When they look at his work, but yeah, that's like top level artist. So if you're just trying to get there, just emulate until you're the man.
Yeah, when you're, I guess that's when you're the type of artist where people contact you, like, we love your art, you should make a game for us, or like be the art director.
Yeah, that's the high end stuff. But
that's when you're like 40 and like you have like 20 years under your belt and you're just so fucking badass at doing art that people just come to you. Oh man, that'd be so fun to be at that level. Because art directors, like, I don't know, I guess it depends on the studio, but they.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
You just cut out for a second there. Are you you're back now?
Am I back?
Okay, you just said art directors, and then you were going to just rip somebody a new one. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to rip someone a new one. I was going to say art directors. No, art directors must have a pretty cool job. I know they have to deal with like a lot of administrative bullshit, but like when the art directors who I've worked with that actually get to do work, they love their job because it's
art directors that are actual art directors, not an art director that doesn't do art and sits in meetings. Yeah, if you're an AD and you're not doing art, you might not really be an AD. You might be a manager that's told you're an AD, but it's cool because you're still making money, right?
Yes, it is. All I want is AD in my title, dog.
Yeah, give me that AD. I've been a lead so many times, I want that shit.
But back to the topic on I guess you were asking how I got into the industry.
Yeah, we need to get. We need to actually start that topic instead of dicking around.
So we were talking about 3D motive stuff and just
Well, you went to. Did you go to school before you started doing all this stuff? Or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Obviously. Well, not obviously. I went to. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. There's a couple of other guys I'm really good friends with who went there. Chris Zdena, Sean Van Gorder had just graduated there. He's probably going to get a job soon. His stuff's looking pretty good. And Rob Krebs and Bradley Washer just got a job at Bradley Washer just got a job at High Moon Studios a couple weeks ago. Yeah, High Moon.
Oh, High Moon.
Hyman. Hyman Studios.
Hyman Studios. I was like, what? That's an unfortunate name.
Yeah, that would be a terrible name.
And I imagine you're naming poly counters.
They're just people who'd probably end up watching this. So it's a pretty. I had an enjoyable experience in college. I thought it was a lot of fun. Really good foundation for learning everything. But I would warn everybody that if you want a job in the industry, going to a school like will give you a good foundation, but it's not enough to get in there really.
Just following the course and graduating means nothing.
Yeah, you need to be the kind of person who puts the love of making video games before the love of playing them. So you need to want to make games more than you want to play them to be successful in this industry.
The coolest thing for me is like when I'm working on a game and I'm just like working on it, then I'm finally like I jump in and I play it and I'm making a building or something, and I just put in the placeholder like floors and collision so I can run up the stairs. And I jump in the game and I run up the stairs and go, yes, fucking made a game. I can run up the stairs.
Yeah,
that's how lame I am, folks.
Well, it's exciting. Because
I love it.
Essentially, it's like when you build Legos, you play with them, right? It's what we do. We are building huge environments.
Well, back on Warhammer, my favorite pieces were making bridges. Because I knew people had to run across those bridges. Like, that means I control them. I build the collision. I control their gameplay right here. I'm the man.
It's almost like a game designer would have like a god complex somewhere.
It's a weird feeling, but it's cool when you actually run on your stuff in a game. It's like, yeah, I'm doing it. I can go up these stairs I made. I made these stairs and I'm running up them.
It's a good feeling. I
imagine you were probably modding before school, right? Or at least you had a computer and you tinkered.
Yeah, I wasn't. I was doing.
You didn't just go to school and be like, I'm gonna make games.
It was like one random day, like we just got a new computer. I think it was back in 1999, and I was like 13 or something like that. And my brother comes home with a a disc.
With the Quake disc.
It said Unreal Tournament.
Oh, here you go, the Unreal Tournament disc.
I was like, what is this shit? And he plugs this game in, and here I think we had like a PS3 or not a PS3. We still had PlayStation or something like that.
Yeah, PlayStation 2.
It was PlayStation and Nintendo 64.
Maybe.
I think PlayStation 2 might have just been coming out around that time.
I'm bad on years right now.
And he loads up on the computer and it's like Facing Worlds. It's that map with two towers, like the two big towers, and they're rotating around space, and there's the planet Earth in the back. It's like a really good capture of the flag map.
I remember those in space maps that they did were the coolest things. They had those gigantic planet. Those were, and they did the big asteroid field. It was just so over the top dramatic. Yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Like you go back and you look at it now, it's like a rectangle and like a really like super like 32 polygon like asteroid chunk on.
Jesus.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, this is so real. And it was the first game that I've ever played with that came with a level editor, because you could play multiplayer on it, and all of a sudden there'd be like this map that you never heard of, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And like someone made this, like it has an author name. It's like, oh, this guy made this. It doesn't even belong to Epic. And I was like, holy shit, this kid made his own map. How did he do that? And I looked up on it and I was like, oh, look, there's an editor here. And I loaded it up, and I remember the very first Unreal editor, the very first version. And I think it took me like 3 or 4 months to even like figure out how to do anything in it, because no one had been doing any tutorials on it.
There was no information back then. People have no idea. There was no YouTube.
And that was
there
my
basically
first
wasn't an
3D.
internet.
Yeah, it was
as it is today.
Yeah, there wasn't like the well-established internet that we have. Google wasn't even around back then, I don't think.
Nah, it was nothing. It was garbage.
And
there was Planet Quake, and that was it.
That was my first. There was Planet Unreal too.
And then Planet Unreal came in at that point.
And
all those planets.
that was my first experience with 3D, and I was like, "This is fucking sweet." And I think shortly after that, I started making my own levels with all their assets and stuff, and got really into the community there. And some server was running my maps. I would contribute maps to the server, and it wasn't like a big server or anything. It was just a gang of people who played together.
Yeah, it's just cool when people were playing your maps.
It was awesome. It was an awesome feeling. It's like I would put secrets in the maps that only I knew about, so I had a huge advantage over everybody else. And I wouldn't tell anybody about the secrets. Like I'd had a redeemer in like this translucent wall, and I would just hop in there, grab the redeemer, and come out, and I'd have a huge advantage over people. I'd be like, "Where the fuck did you get that redeemer?"
You're like, in the map.
I was like, "I made the map, bitch," and shoot him with the redeemer.
Yeah,
and,
it's really satisfying,
awesome. It was
man.
a great feeling, and I knew from then on, I was like, that's all I did. Like I would make maps and play Unreal Tournament. Like that's all I did. Like until like World of Warcraft came out. Like that's all I fucking did.
Yeah.
And
I think I did very much the same thing. I did the same thing with Quake 2. I released at least 3 or 4 maps that I released for Quake 2, and I don't even know where they are on the internet now, if they're even on the internet. Who knows? But when you're the same way, like when I got Unreal when it came out, but then Unreal Tournament came. Unreal Tournament didn't come out until after I got my first job. So when Unreal Tournament came out, we were also making pretty much an arena shooter, which was that PC game called Gore. You don't have to look it up.
Gore.
But we were when Unreal Tournament came out, we were playing that like crazy, and immediately jumping in, checking out the editor and the feed. Because when that came out, it was like, whoa, look at this thing. It's Quake 3 Arena came out. Like, was it before? I don't remember if it was before or after, but those games came out and they were just hot as crap. And people were just releasing maps like crazy and getting jobs, like getting picked up.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
That was like, I mean, that's. I can't comment on that time because I was like.
Well, at least you had access to Unreal Tournament, the editor.
Yeah,
but
I didn't.
It was like that time was like the first really good game editors were coming out.
I wonder what it was like to get jobs back then, though. Like, what year did you get your first job?
1997.
Oh shit! So you've been in the industry a while, man.
Yeah. I'm old, dude.
Yeah,
I just turned 33 last week ago.
How old were you when you got your first job?
Like right out of high school. I'm thinking
18, 19?
18 or 19, maybe.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, it had to be 18 because I was born early in the year, and it was hired late in the year. Yeah, the first 2 games I released were add-ons for Quake 2.
Oh shit. So like, what was it like back then? because like that back then, like working on a video game, I mean, to my knowledge, wasn't exactly known as like the most lucrative job ever. You know, like
no, I didn't really make any money. I mean, nobody really makes any money unless you're high level stuff. But back then, it was, as far as the internet was concerned, it was basically like just blackness, just nothingness. Every website had a black background, and the only websites that you went to were the ones you knew about.
It was like Christopher Columbus coming to...
Yeah, they were, because you couldn't just search it up, you know what I mean?
Vast open space.
Communities were things that people just knew about. Like every site was like word of mouth.
I think like 70% of the internet back then was the porn industry.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure of it.
It's like the first thing that came on the internet.
But it's not as good as it is now, man. Back then,
the genesis of the internet.
Back then, it was like this 32 by 32 GIF of like a close up of. You don't even know what it really is.
It's like in the beginning there was Al Gore.
Now it's all HD.
And then there was porn.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
But as far as getting a job, I don't know. I don't want to say lucky, but I put a lot of work into my web. I had the old GeoCities website and put a lot of tutorials on there and got putting out skins for Quake and maps for Quake, and then got picked up by Planet Quake and had a site on there.
Skins always blew my mind because I had no idea how people made skins. Like I had no idea what the concept of UV mapping was.
Oh, it's weird.
Yeah, like that's how bizarre my introduction to 3D was, because all I knew is how to slap textures on BSP. You know, like I didn't really think. And I couldn't make things like barrels and shit. I could only make things out of BSP brushes.
If you're not really familiar with 3D modeling, you have to make a model, and you have to make a texture. But just as important as that is you have to make the UVs, which is basically where you take the model and you split it up on like a weird 2D plane to make the layout of the texture. And it has to follow a lot of specific technical guidelines, like all the pixels all around the mesh have to be about the same, or if you're doing a character, maybe more in the head, or you know what I mean. Everything is variety here.
It's taking 3D coordinates.
Yeah, it's
putting
a
them
math
exclusively in a 2D world.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain it as layman as possible. Like even if you've made any models before, you don't even need to hear this. But it's like you take the model. It's like papercraft. And
exactly.
And Tetris.
Exactly.
It's a lot like the game Tetris. Anyway.
How is it like the game Tetris?
It's exactly like Tetris. You flatten your model out, and it's all these pieces, and you got to put them into a box.
Oh, yeah, okay, I see that.
Or it's a puzzle. It's like a puzzle. I was
thinking like shit falling down. I was like, what?
Yeah, your UVs, they start falling down.
Papercraft is perfect, though.
They start falling down, and you have to put your UVs at the right time, or your computer deletes the hard drive.
Papercraft is like advanced UVing, because everything's on the same UV island. Like papercraft is you take a piece of paper and you fold it and it forms into a 3D model. That's exactly what UV unwrapping is if you take that, except we model first and then flatten it. Papercraft is it's flat and then you model it. That's if you were to flatten, it would unfold just like a papercraft.
Welcome to the
map.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's like what UV unwrapping is. It's the biggest sticking point that artists have trying to break into the industry. I think is really getting good at UVing, because if you're good at UV mapping, then you can be a 3D artist. It's that first hurdle that you face, like oh, I can make cubes and I can make cylinders and shit like that, but can I really make like a head and unwrap and actually put a texture on it? And that's where a lot of people just fall over. Like there's a lot of inner portfolios on the internet of just grayscale models. It's
untextured, or as I call them, unfinished work, or as I call them, whips, or as I call them, they shouldn't be there. Unless you're one of those people that's like a what do you call it, like a hard surface artist, where it's just all these badass high poly models, and then you get the pass because you're badass. That's how it goes. The badass pass. So yeah, you did some modding. You went to school.
Oh yeah.
Where was your first job?
It was Digital Extremes.
So your first job was you were kind of being shopped out. Well, okay, so you did some freelance.
Yeah, I did freelance for a guy named Joe Cleary. He was running a company called Emotional Robots. They were working on a mod called Warm Gun. And I think they put it out on the iPhone OS or something. And
I saw that.
I saw like
it looks really good.
Like,
if you know the community, you know Warm Gun and Emotional Robots. You have to know these because there's so many good people there. Anyway,
a lot of people got their start there. Too.
That reminds me, I should think about that, because I totally forgot about some the very first contract work I did was even earlier than those quick things. Is there a robber in your house?
I just heard a noise. I think it was the blinds, though.
Okay.
Kind of threw me a little bit.
No, I forgot about some contract work that I worked on Battle Cruiser 3000 AD before I got any job anywhere.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what it is either. No, I got some money for that.
So
I totally forgot about that.
The weird thing is it wasn't modeling. That's not what I was.
It's not even in my resume.
I got paid for doing character rigging. I was rigging characters before.
Wait, you rig characters?
Yeah, I did.
Damn, you're technical as fuck.
I have it on my YouTube channel. If you go to my channel, it says Scout Test or something like that, and it's like this Indian scout, and I had to rig them all up, and I did like 4 or 5 characters for this guy, and it was a pain in the ass. But you know what? I learned a lot about rigging, and I learned a lot about setting up controllers and skinning. Skinning especially is a pain in the ass, but when you do it 5 times on 5 complex characters, like you start to develop techniques and shit like that. And I think it was such a great, valuable experience.
And by the way, for those that don't know, skinning is an animation term.
Skinning,
not to be confused with skinning as in painting a texture map for a character.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good distinction to make. Skinning animation is driven by a skeletal system of just they're points essentially in space. They're pivot points, and the game will, when you animate, you just move those points around and you rotate them, and they move the rest of the actual geometrical mesh, which would be the model. And so when you skin a mesh to a skeleton, you have to assign a weight to the vertices that are associated with that joint, or I guess you would call it that joint or bone. So it's this really elaborate and monotonous task of just selecting.
It's too bad Brian's not here, because he's an animator.
Yeah, he would be able to explain.
He'd be like,
I can.
"Oh yeah, it's like this," and look at my muscles.
Awesome.
And he's actually not here. He doesn't even know this is happening, probably. Normally, we plan these things out. Tonight was very impromptu.
Impromptu.
Because you've been talking about wanting to be on here, and
yeah,
it's really hard to get people on a podcast. Because hey, will you do my podcast? Is the new will you give me a ride to the airport? That's not my joke.
It's always like.
I think that was a Neil Brennan. I'm not sure. But there was a famous. I follow a bunch of comedians on Twitter, and one of the comedians tweeted that. I apologize for not knowing exactly.
Well, I think it would be like that if you were famous. But if I got asked to do a podcast, I'd be like, yeah, it sounds fun.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people are really confused. They think, oh no, what will I do? What will I say? And
it's just a conversation.
After they do the podcast, they realize how easy that was.
Absolutely.
Like we're already 45 minutes in. And
it doesn't even seem like
you probably haven't. Yeah, you haven't even started yet, and that's the way it really feels. And it becomes very natural very quickly. And another thing about most game developers are generally not accustomed to either public speaking or being in front of people, so it is a little intimidating. And they also don't have the Tom Cruise good looks of Ryan James Smith.
Oh, come on.
Now I see you right. You got the lighting going now. You got the monitor lighting where one side is blue, and you got the lamp beside you, one side is kind of orange. So you look like every Mission Impossible movie poster right now.
I just need to run.
Yeah, just start running.
Run towards the camera.
Run towards the camera.
With blue and yellow lighting.
That's the whole Mission Impossible movie.
Oh man. Yeah, so I did the skinning. We'll move along from the skinning.
The skinning.
And then I was looking for a job for like 6 months after I graduated. I was supposed to start at Shell Games, or get a job at Shell Games. That was the plan, which was like right behind my house where I was living in Pittsburgh. And it was one of those things where they needed to get signed off on a project. And they were like, okay, well, wait 3 weeks and we'll have this meeting and we'll get signed off and then we'll hire you. Because they didn't want to hire me and then not get greenlit for this project, and then they just they would fire me right on the spot.
Right, that happened to me one time. I applied for a job, passed the art test, did the full interview, everything was great, and they didn't get the project, and they're like, "We're sorry."
Yeah, I felt like I was pretty much, I was kind of strung along because it was like 2 weeks went by, and they're like, "Okay, check back in 2 weeks," and then 2 weeks went by, and they're like, "Check back in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
And here I'm like, okay, I've got this, because I had an insider who was like, "You've got the job. We just need the projects." And I was like, okay, sweet. So I stopped doing shit on my portfolio. So like months went by. I wasn't doing anything. I was just working. I was working trying to make money so I could,
eat,
live and eat. And I'm like, okay, I could just keep doing this for a couple more months until this job happens, and then I won't have to worry about this shit. I'll fucking quit my serving job and walk out on the spot. Blah 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 blah. And that never happened. I was like, oh fuck. So eventually I had to move home. But luckily, before I moved home, one day, I just started getting offers. Like I just started getting like emails sent back, because you send these portfolios out and you never really hear back from anyone. Like jobs@soandso.com. Like you always send your portfolio there, and chances are you're not going to hear shit from them. A lot of people say they're garbage cans anyways.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, these email addresses aren't main or direct email addresses.
Yeah.
And
like,
people that are actually working have this main email address that gets piles of work emails a day that they have to sift through, and that's hard enough. So I think it might be like, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but unless they're really hard looking for a job, somebody might not check that email address every day.
Yeah,
that might be a once a week check. You send on Monday, they check on Friday.
Yeah, and your stuff can get overlooked pretty quickly that way.
Absolutely.
It's a pain in the butt, but I didn't know that. I mean, I just sent them anyways, because like, what else are you going to do, right? I didn't really know anyone in the industry at that point.
And it's very difficult when you're... I've put out job apps myself before when I was at bigger companies and had those opportunities. And when you post a job somewhere, especially a busy site like a Polycount or something, all of a sudden you've got a dozen to 100 possible emails of applicants.
Yeah.
It just depends. If some school sees this, all of a sudden you've got everybody from that school. And yeah, it's really easy to get overloaded, because basically you're just like, next email, click, okay, portfolio, next. If I don't instantly see the art, I'm just like, next.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I attribute my first job, Polycount got me my first job for sure. And this brings me to a point I wanted to make earlier.
Well, I tried.
I'm just kidding.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Putting your shit on Polycount or another online game art community like I don't know, like 3D Total. We're not really game art, but they're 3D modeling and stuff like that. And CG Society or Game Artisans or any of those other wacky
any
Japanese
site
forums.
That gets professional developers looking at.
Exactly. So I mean, I've been on Polycount since September 2007. So it's almost going to be 5 years this September.
Dude.
And I just post my shit. You post your shit, you become part of the community, you get critiques, you get your name out there. And if you post enough shit, then people will be like, hey, remember that piece that so-and-so did? Or it'll get... I used to post stuff on what are you working on, which is just a big clusterfuck of work.
That I click on that more than anything.
Yeah, that's the only thing I really click on.
That's the place to go.
That's a lot where a lot of professionals go too. They just browse Weibo because they don't want to look at student work in the lower threads. And I got three or four different companies contacted me like within the span of a month. One was Digital Extremes, one was Raven Software. Ilphonic was another one, the company you work for, and towards the end, Terminal Reality as well. And I did interviews with Raven and Ilphonic and Digital Extremes, and finally when I decided on Digital Extremes, I thought I really liked the studio there. The town was awesome. Holy shit. It was a college town, and there was like so many girls in this town. It was ridiculous. It was just like one big college town. And Canada is so fucking awesome. It's so laid back. It's not... London wasn't really that cold. It was actually one of the warmest parts of Canada. So it was kind of like Northeast Ohio weather, but beautiful summers and shit tons of snow in the wintertime. But it was all green, and people are so nice there. And it was just a really awesome...
I can only say nice things about Canada.
Yeah, Canada, like, I can only say nice things about Canada. Some of my best friends are in Canada. And, yeah, like, that's where I got my first job. So I went out there, and the way it happened is I got an email from James Schmaltz, one of the I think he's the brother of the CEO. I'm not sure if he's I think they both co-own it. So he's like, hey, I saw your stuff on Polycount. Would you be interested in doing full-time work for us? And I was like, fuck yeah. So he put me in contact with HR, and they flew me out there, did an interview, and that was it. And that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah.
If the company is interested in you, they're going to fly you to the studio, and they're going to interview you on the spot. And well, not on the spot, but they're going to interview you and see that you're not a crazy person. And chances are, if the chances are if they're spending the money flying you out there on the interview, you pretty much got the job unless you fuck the interview over. And
that hasn't been your only job, and because of layoffs, you've gotten around. And I would just like to add, had you taken that job at Elphonic, you would have never been laid off. You've had a stable career. No, yeah. I know it wasn't exactly right for you, and that's fine. I'm not one of those guys that takes like, I'm personally mad at this guy because he didn't.
No,
take
I
the
felt
job.
bad because I really liked Elphonic.
Yeah, you would have been you would have been a good fit. You would have had a good time.
I think I would have too. I think I would have had a lot of fun. But
you would have got to go on to Crytek.
It was it was a startup, and
people worry that there's a risk of that.
I didn't want my first job to be a startup. Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable taking it as a startup. I was like, I want to. At the time, I was really fucking poor, and I really wanted. I think I was about to go off my mom's health care, and I needed a job with benefits and stuff like that. And,
right. And that's totally understood. You were at the position where you needed a place that you knew had a track record.
Yeah,
just to be safe, and we were brand new. Whereas I was in the position of I had some money saved up, and I've been making games a long time, and I'm like, hey, let's just do this.
You had the resources to take the risk,
right?
And
whereas you just weren't in that position, and like I said, it was a startup. You were going to be entry level. It wasn't going to be what you wanted.
And I broke my role too. I told myself the first company that offers me a job, I'm going to take it. That's what I told myself.
But then you got so awesome that you got multiple offers.
I think I just got lucky. I just think I pulled out.
Well, you did some smart things.
Right. I think there's a lot of people who are way better than I am who just don't market themselves at all, and because they don't market themselves, they don't have a job. Like, there's this one guy I've been talking to. He's been showing me his work, and I'm like, this is fucking amazing. How come I've never seen your shit on Polycount before? He's like, oh, well, I guess I don't really market myself. And he just put out a demo reel. And he worked on The Matrix 3, Revolutions.
The movie.
The shots that he had in there, I don't know if he did the models or if he composed the shots. I think he did the models. But the mech scene where, like, the mech's, like, shooting at the fucking, like, the Sentinel hordes, like, flying by. Like, I think he modeled that. He either modeled it or did the animation for it, or else, that shot wouldn't be in his demo reel. I was like, dude, like, you have really good, you have experience and input that matters in this community, and you don't do shit about it, and you don't have a job. Like, what are you doing? Like, I know so many companies that would jump on you if you just put yourself out there.
Dude. People without a lot of professional experience that have, like, worked with a lot of different people at different companies have no idea how many people are out there. They just don't do that. Like, okay, if you're involved in art communities, who this guy, this artist, and this guy who's he posts his stuff and he's cool and he's awesome, blah blah blah. This famous artist, but I think I have worked with well over I would say 2 to 5 times more people that are just amazing. Like the people that people look up to. Oh, this guy's the best. Now I know 5 guys at this company I'm working at now. Back when I was at Mythic, man, there were so many guys there that were just amazing. That have no community presence. No one knows who they are. They're just like far better than top fanboy artists. You know what I mean?
They're like the humble artists.
There's so many guys out there.
They're so good, but they just don't really market themselves and get themselves out there. And I guess sometimes they're. Like I say, they're humble artists. Like, they don't really care who sees them.
Well, they're humble, or they're... A lot of these guys, these are the guys that are, like, so good that they don't have to have a presence.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, I need to get a new job. Here's my resume to whatever company. And they're like, holy shit, this guy applied. Get him here now or I'll kill you.
The experience alone can be your portfolio. There's, like, a lot of people I know who who have been in the industry so long that they can seriously just list their ship titles, and they'll be like, holy fuck, okay, what do you want? Like,
Yeah.
what do you want your title to be? Lead?
Yeah. Who do you want to be? Yeah.
Yeah, and oh man, that would be a really cool point to get to, because you know that it's almost like you're tenured. You're always gonna have a job, but as long as you're willing to move, you know, if you get laid off or whatever. Yeah, speaking of layoffs, id Software after DE. This is another weird example of just being in the right place at the right time and networking. I was in the model design IRC chat.
Can you tell this story? I'll be right back.
Oh, you're okay. Just want me to keep talking?
Yeah, just tell your story. I'm just saying it'll be like a second.
Okay.
I just got to go to the restroom.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So, anyways, another example of just being in the right place at the right time. I'm in a web chat server, and a guy who works at Bethesda, Chris Zedna. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. Zedana, I think, is his last name. He's like, hey dude, id Software is looking for an effects artist. And at this point I'm about 10 months into the job at Digital Extremes, and I'm not even an effects artist. I'm just doing environment work at the time. But I was dabbling. I had already done the 3D Motive, my first 3D Motive tutorial, the one on advanced mesh paint in UDK, and I guess I had at that point kind of gotten a little bit of a reputation of being more technical savvy than most. And he's like, id Software's looking for an effects artist. Would you be interested in it? And I was like, holy shit, id Software. And at that point, I'm thinking that would be, that's endgame for a lot of artists. They want to get a job at id Software. It just kind of has that reputation. And I was like, I can't believe this. I can't say no to this opportunity, because how awesome would that be if I could take a shortcut, so to speak, and get a job at id and work on such a cool game. They were working on Rage at the time. So I talked to this guy, Jeremy Mitchell, and he's like, we need help with effects towards the end of Rage. It's shipping in 6 months. Do you want to, or not 6 months, but like I think he said it was around 9-10 months. They were slated for a September ship date at that point, and it was November. And he's like, we're looking for an effects artist. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. So I sent him all the stuff that I had done, some of the tutorials and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, let me talk to HR and we'll go ahead and get you a plane ticket out here. And I was just absolutely ecstatic at that point, because out of nowhere, just me being in this chat room this one night, this opportunity falls in my lap. So I had to explore that, and it worked out, and I ended up getting the job at id Software as an effects artist. And I worked on Rage for 6 months, and that shipped. And over the last 4 months, we haven't really been doing much of anything. Did a little work on Doom 4 multiplayer, and all of a sudden layoffs hit, and I got cut because they didn't need 3 effects artists at that point. They had 3. They had one guy working on one project, another guy working on another, and then I guess I was just kind of idling. So, along with 29 other people, are just like, peace. So, I mean, I don't think they've disclosed an official reason or anything like that, but I can't comment as to why they did the layoffs. I don't know.
Layoffs just happen, and
it's a part
they
of
can
the
happen
industry.
anywhere. You don't deserve an explanation.
I learned a lot there, though, and I met a lot of great artists. It was a really cool experience. A lot of really cool artists who are going to go places if they leave id eventually, or even if they stay there, they're gonna really blow up to be prominent in the industry. Some of these guys are so good.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about when you're at a bigger company that has either an art-centric or tech-centric style. That say id or Epic or like a Blizzard, any company that has like a certain thing. Like id and Epic are tech-centric, or Crytek very tech-centric. So people that come out of there extremely technical, knowledgeable on the highest end. Whereas like if you're an art-centric company like a Runic or a Blizzard or something, yeah, they have good tech too, but I'm just more people that come out of there are just really artistic, really good people.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great studio to go to if you're about the art, essentially. And it's all, on the other hand, there's some fucking amazing game designers there too. Like the level designers at id are unbelievable. Some of the levels in Rage were just genius. They were genius. And those level designer guys, like, they were the guys who were like always in their own meetings, drawing on the whiteboards, like discussing really cool shit, and just the way that studio operated in terms of like how they let their artists and their designers make the game was really interesting, because it wasn't like that at Digital Extremes. It kind of, there's a more structured type of, I guess you would call it, chain of command. And
well, id grew off of that design.
Yeah, exactly. Like their games have always been
people
just,
can I think you could pretty much say id invented first person
yeah,
design
absolutely.
for levels, or just first person in general. But as far as level design goes, they were like, all the deathmatch maps, all the high end gameplay, like full 3D first person fast paced gameplay. Like, that's where design has to be at its highest. It's not like you're just running down a hall and some cinematics are playing.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's in Rage there were no cinematics, really. I think there was only 2 or 3 instances where the camera actually cut away from the first person. One in like the intro sequence, another in Meat and Bash, and I think that might actually be it. And they just stick so close to that first person genre, and they do it so well. And the gameplay is always so fun and very finely tuned that it just makes it a really fun game. And that doesn't come out of nowhere. That comes from years and years and years of being oriented towards that type of gameplay. And I don't think there could ever be a studio who does a first-person shooter as good as id Software will. And like that's not something that you could say quite often, is that you're a master of a genre.
I would argue that there won't be one that would do it as good as id Software did. There's been a lot of changes over the last few years.
It's like one of those things where like GoldenEye was like so revolutionary, but when you go back and play it, it's kind of shit compared to what we have now. You know what I mean? Like if you go back and play Doom, you couldn't look up and down.
You can't at all.
Yeah, like
you can't jump.
Like you can't say that Rage isn't as good as Doom, like in terms of gameplay. Like, you know what I mean? Like
it's a total different comparison.
It's
the way
like
they
the
did levels
U.S.
back then.
going to war with like Afghanistan. Like the technological difference is so skewed. Like you can't really compare the two and call it fair. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but the skill of the Afghan warriors.
Yeah, dude, that analogy works out. Like
Afghanistan is
no country
most
has ever conquered Afghanistan.
It's the most war experienced
It's the graveyard
country.
of nations.
No one can take it. No one can take it. It's ridiculous.
The Russians fell in Afghanistan.
That's why you can't. And that's why you can't fuck with Doom.
Yeah,
bring all your tech you want, Rage. You can't fuck with Doom.
That you turned that analogy around on me so well and so appropriately that.
Welcome to the real world.
Oh, I'm in the big leagues now.
Yeah. You're on the, what is this, 28th episode of the CrunchCast? Jeez, we're 28 deep, son.
28. But yeah, so I do not work at it anymore.
But it's kind of like a dream come true. You got it on the resume. You got a big.
It's
no matter what anybody says about Rage. It's a big
Rage
title.
Rage is a good game.
That's a big title.
They had some slip ups, like story line, but like the gameplay wise, I played that game every day at work for like 2 hours. Like I had a lot of fun playing it. At DE, I can't always say that I had a shit ton of fun playing Darkness 2, but towards the end I did. But like when you're in like the alpha of a game where like half the shit's broken, you're like, I hate going into this game and playing this.
It's cool when you can run around your game the whole time through development. When you've got when it's like you come in and the first email that you read is, don't sync the game. The game is down. And you have to wait a week to a month for the programmers to figure out what the fuck happened.
Dude, Perforce is one of those programs that you don't expect that you have to use. Like, it comes out of nowhere when you get your first job. It's something that you never really have to use before.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Perforce, there's also other programs like it called Visual Source Safe and all kinds of stuff. They're basically big banks of files, like a computer that isn't yours. It stores all the files and stores history of the files. So if you open it up from that server to edit it, you can edit it on your machine locally, like anything, but then when you save it, it saves an iteration back to a server so that, yeah, everything is safe, okay, blah, blah, blah. We can revert. If you fuck it up, we can revert.
Yeah, it's a depository or a repository. Repository or depository? It's kind of both.
A refuse bin.
You could, yeah, so you just, like, say, like, person A is working on, one file. He checks it out from the program, and it makes it so no one else could work on that file. And when he's done, he checks it in, and then everyone else syncs up, and all the files sync up over the network.
Usually, what game developers start their day with is getting latest, or reading an email that says "Don't get latest."
Yeah, they'll say "Don't sync up, or you'll fuck the entire thing up," or something. But I hate Perforce. Like, I hate dealing with it, and I'm one of those people that if I don't have to use that program like for 4 hours a day, like I don't even bother learning how to use it. Like, I'll just be like, why isn't this working? And I'll just click buttons and be ignorant about it. But one time at id Software, towards the end of my tenure, I'm sitting there, and I did something weird in Perforce, and I was changing something with like what folders I was syncing up to, and I ended up doing something weird, and I knew it was something weird. And I was like, whatever, fuck it. And I just closed it, and I sat there, and like 6 hours go by. And like our technical artist, Seneca Bernard, he like pulls his head back. He's like, Ryan, you have, I don't know if you know this or not, but you have every single file checked out in Perforce. And I was like, what? And I looked
Revert if unchanged.
And yeah, what I had done is check out every single file in the depository. So like, every file that Rage was in, like the Rage had, everything was checked out, so no one could edit it for like 6 hours, or they could edit it, but they couldn't save it and sync it up. And it was like a shortcut key I hit, and like you could fuck the entire network
from a shortcut key.
You
gotta be careful with those things, man.
Like you could like delete all your files and check it in, and it'll delete all the files in that change list. And when people sync up, it'll just clear their hard drives. And
that's what it does. If you delete stuff. When people get latest, it deletes the file off their local.
Yeah, and then they'll have to go back, and then they'll have to re-download a terabyte of data, and they'll be really pissed at you because
I gotta do a full sync to be back tomorrow, guys.
Oh god, like the intricacies of the game industry are always hilarious to kind of to talk to like people who are in about, because it's like just getting a look behind the scenes.
Yeah, here's some deep shit. We were making sure all our case-sensitive stuff was right on some files we were working on in a game, and we're using Perforce, and I had to change all the levels so that their file names were specifically case-sensitive.
Yeah.
So that every one of the files had like capital C, lowercase a, you know what I mean? Like everything, it was for the file formatting, and getting Perforce to put in the exact same file name with a case-sensitive difference sounds simple enough, but when you're doing it to a whole bunch of files, boy, that is brutal.
Oh god! So yeah, there's so many people who are also in the game industry that aren't artists that do this shit for a living, like IT guys and like some producers and localization people. Like, when you do a global release, you have to make sure that your game is translated into all those different languages. Like a lot of different languages, like German, Japanese, Chinese, like our Mandarin, whatever, and American, and like that's their job. Like for like 6 months before the game, they'll just be like getting translators for their work, and they'll make sure that like all the UI scenes have the correct text to be displayed. It's like
localization is something we're going through at work now.
Yeah, it's just a pain in the ass, and I've never done it, but I would not want to do that. Like, that's therapy work. That's like sitting there like this, like like with your fucking palm on your face, just like going over lines of text. Yeah, would not want to do that at all. But
no, it sucks. Hey, just a stupid anecdote and polycount related. I made a Quake 2 player model with a couple other guys. Like somebody else animated it and did sounds and a few weapons because we had custom weapons. Anyway, point is, in Game Developer Magazine, that my Quake 2 player model ended up in a localization company's ad. And anyway, that's all I got. But no, it was kind of weird that a player model that I released on pretty much what was Polycount before Q2PMP ended up in some game developer ad. Some random company just said, "Oh, we're just going to take this player model."
Copyright. That was piracy.
Yeah, it stole it. I wish SOPA was real because it would shut them down.
Oh, don't say that.
We're not even going to talk about that because that's some bullshit. Apparently,
that's
it's
a whole
halted
different
for now.
podcast right there.
I try to avoid political stuff because you got to be careful what you talk about, and we try to stay on point.
Yeah, we're on point people. Yeah, so
you worked at id, and then you just got laid off last week or some shit.
Yeah, just got laid off last week.
What a loser!
The interesting part about
did you get severance?
Yeah,
nice.
I did. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it.
No, don't talk about anything.
They were like,
don't say anything.
Like like I don't even. I'd love to tell the story of like how it went because it's such like a surreal experience. Like the layoff process, and it wasn't anything like I would expect it to be. I'm not going to get any deeper because if ZeniMax is a company that would sue Notch for naming his game Scrolls, then
yeah.
Like, fuck that.
Dude, I've been through all that shit, all the crazy layoffs. I've had layoffs that were company-wide emails where half the guys got an email that said, come to this meeting room, and the other half of the guys got an email that said, come to this meeting room. And it was pretty obvious what was happening. Like, as soon as you looked at the guy, you say, "Hey, where did they tell you to go? Somewhere different." All right, well, either one of us is going to get laid off.
It's weird because I can't you'd think that they would just gather everyone in a room, and be like, "Look, this is what's happening." Fuck, I want to talk about it, but I'm not going to.
It's
I don't
cool.
want to get sued.
I'll tell you another story. I had a layoff where just some guy that I knew that was he was above me and a good guy, and I like him, and I still like him today. He's a good guy. He just came to my office and said, "Hey, come with me." And that's when I found out we had layoffs. And he just took me to a room full of people. And I was like, "Oh, I see."
Yeah.
But it was cool.
It was bizarre. I mean, I guess I'm glad I had the experience because I guess I know what to look for now, like the signs to look for at a studio before layoffs happen. For a while there, there was nothing going on.
If you're not if you're doing any kind of busy work,
I was doing stuff that had nothing to do with effects. Like I was learning MaxScript for like a month. Like I would go into work and I would just learn MaxScript, and I was like, this will be useful someday to either people here or for myself to improve my own workflow.
That's when you have to start expecting it. When they're not assigning work to you.
I kind of did start to see it coming, and so another opportunity came knocking on my door one day via email, and actually, I probably shouldn't talk about that either.
What, your new job? Can you not announce it?
Well, just certain details about it. But
sure. Don't.
The reason I'm not allowed to talk about a lot of stuff is because the fucking non-disclosure agreements in the industry run rampant.
Yes.
Like, you don't see anything without signing a contract saying that if you talk about this, we could sue you.
Right.
And there might be some clause somewhere in the contract that they'll, I guess, I don't even know what the word would be, but indicate that indict you, I guess, of committing some kind of contract.
Generally, it is professional to speak of things in an anecdotal way. Not so much, and there's never details, there's never company names. Just say, hey, here's my experience, something that happened to me, or the next level of that
it'll be obvious now.
Well, the next level of it is just plain advice based on it without mentioning the experience at all and saying, look, for layoffs, blah, this is what I got from it.
Yeah. I guess my advice to people would be, if you're not doing shit at work and you see no clear like way forward in your company that's certain, and there's a lot of people at your studio not doing anything, it's time to start looking out for yourself.
It's coming.
And
I always tell people, always have your portfolio ready.
Making phone calls. Yeah. So I had already secured a job at another studio in Austin before I even got laid off. So I was super lucky.
Yeah, that's very good timing.
The layoffs hit like January 9th or something like that, or the 8th.
First day or the day before CES, huh?
Yeah, and I was planning on giving my 2 weeks notice. 2 weeks after that.
So you were already on the way out anyway.
Yeah, and I was like, fuck, I'm gonna. And I was strategically holding my 2 weeks notice off because I didn't want to repay relocation assistance, because they spent $5,000 on me, pulling me from Canada all the way to Texas. And like I shipped my car down and everything. Like I didn't even drive down. I shipped my car and flew.
I shipped my car, bitch. Yeah. I'm rich. No, I'm just.
Yeah,
I got no money.
So, yeah, like, but there's a the contracts. There's always, depends on the studio, but there'll be like a line on the contract. Like, if you don't stay here for such and such amount of time, then you have to pay back so and so amount of your relocation expenses. It's just so they don't spend $5,000 sending some guy from Australia to New York City, and then he gets there for a week, and all his shit's moved and paid for, and then he just quits.
Yeah,
like it's just kind of like just something to prevent you fucking over the studio.
It's a real thing. It's important.
So if I would have put my 2 weeks in, I would have had to repay a lot of that money back. But
instead you got severance.
Yeah, instead I got laid off, and they paid me money. So I really lucked out there, and but there's a lot of really good artists who didn't luck out.
Yeah,
who don't have
it
jobs,
is unfortunate.
And
like
who are way better than me, and I'm just questioning why they would. I don't really question their choice. But
look, a lot of times, you know who's good. Your leads know who's good or not.
Well,
but it doesn't matter. The people above them.
Yeah, your leads usually.
Whoever is two steps above actual production, as in actual people making art and content, whatever for the game, their leads. The people above them have no idea anything unless you're really involved.
Depends on the studio.
Unless you're really
Digital
involved.
Extremes is not like that at all. Digital Extremes,
otherwise,
amazing leadership.
Yeah. Point is, if you're not those guys, they're just throwing darts at a board and you just got hit.
Yeah.
So people get laid off. It's like I remember being at companies where people got laid off and everybody was like, "What? Wait a minute, you got laid off? There's no. You would have been the last person I thought to get laid off. You're like the top guy here. What? Why am I here? Why are you? What? And like I said, a lot of that is just darts at a board, man.
Yeah, and I'll say something about Digital Extremes and how awesome they were. Like the producers there were.
They didn't just order pizzas.
They were good friends. They actually produced with people. Like they had like one of those. They were very open door. Like if you had an idea about the game, go talk to them.
That's cool.
And like they'll actually make an attempt to make sure that shit goes in. And I'm not saying that anywhere else I've worked wasn't like that, but they just did it in a particular way where they really made you feel welcome.
You felt comfortable in it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the art director was someone who was always constantly in the pits talking to people, directing, actually doing art direction, and he
not just managing.
He did work too, and our art director was really cool. He would come out for beer, or not our art director, our lead environment artist Ron Davey. He would come out and drink with us on special occasions, like if it was one of our birthdays. We all wanted to get drinks after work. He'd come with me, and the studio was just so fucking cool.
Yeah.
They would have. They had chefs on staff that cooked lunch for the entire studio every day, so you didn't have to pay to go to lunch.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
They had like a pool. They had all these games like pool tables. They didn't really police hours too much as long as you got your shit done, and they never crunched. At least not when I was there. They didn't crunch. I don't know if they crunched it towards the end of Darkness or not, but when I was there, the only time they crunched was a couple weeks before, like a weekend before Milestone was due, and it would be optional. And most of the time, they didn't even need you. And they were just so fucking cool. And it was a great studio, and they really made you feel welcome. But
if anybody wants to come work at Elphonic, we've got a full gym.
Dude, Elphonic. When I came out there,
we've got a newer studio now. We've got a bigger studio.
They were just getting a new studio, and when I went and interviewed with them, they were. don't know. Am I allowed to tell this?
What do you want to say?
Yeah, I was where you guys were before the studio.
What, next to the weed store?
No. You were in that apartment.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's right. It started in a studio apartment.
Yeah, it was.
Did you interview then?
Yeah,
Jesus,
I interviewed them.
God, that's
it was
why.
Way back when. You had.
I'm glad you didn't take the job. No, I just. No, that did suck. But we moved right into a really big office. That's what I kept telling the guys. I'm like, you can't. I even told them when you were coming out there. I'm like, dude, we can't be bringing this guy out here for this.
It was like dirty carpet.
Yeah, it was a studio apartment. They were only there for it was
just computer setup.
It was just a studio apartment,
but that's it. That's indie
and
game.
The guy had his bed. The guy that lived there had his bed in the closet, and the other guy that lived there just inflated an inflatable mattress every night once everybody left.
Yeah, but that's how indie games are made.
And
I realize that now. That's a bunch of people who really want to make a game.
That's when you're actually
living on
passionate
the fucking cheap.
About the game.
Yeah, you're living on the cheap. You're sharing a fucking apartment, and you're making games all day long. Like that's all you do is you're making games.
The fact that we've gotten from there to where we are now, it's
awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and
the fact that they've kept me quality employed for the last couple of years, that's coming from that to where we are now. It's like, what? Really? They did that? All right.
I had a lot of fun that weekend when I came out.
It was fun. We had fun.
Yeah, we went out, and then I met my buddy, and then we went out drinking, and it was a lot of fun. And when I didn't take the job, I felt really bad because I really wanted it. It just shitty circumstances for me.
Well, you should have felt bad because this is a really small company that spent a lot of money to fly you out.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
You owe us. You owe us big. And no, it's. I'm just diverting from the topic. So that's where you are now in your life. You're moving. You're transitioning to a new job right now.
Yeah, my fourth move and like.
Your fourth relocation?
Yeah, Pittsburgh to Canada to Dallas to Austin.
Now I don't know. You didn't see the last episode, I'm sure, yet. But the last episode was about relocation.
Oh yeah.
How would you feel about discussing any of the hazards or perils or just the general trials and tribulations or challenges? How many more synonyms do you want of changing a country from going to Canada to the United States?
Oh well.
I feel like there's something big there. There's something worth talking about. There's a
huge fucking pain in the ass is when the banking systems aren't tied together, Canada and America. So if you have to pay back student loans or credit card debt with an American bank, it becomes a huge pain in the ass to do that because
that's definitely something people would be interested in because there's so many students and studios.
The thing that people will be like, well, why don't you just do it on the internet? Well, it's not that simple.
Yes.
When you work in Canada, you get paid in CND, which is.
I thought you got paid in like beaver skins.
Canadian dollars. No, that's Indians in the bartering. Canada's
called natives.
A little bit more sophisticated. They have more than 100 miles of road across that country, which contrary to what a lot of people think. No, you get paid CND, and it's actually on par with the dollar right now. A couple times it's actually been more valuable than the U.S. dollar. So right then and there, it's more expensive to live up there. And in your bank account, you have Canadian dollars, which is a different value than U.S. dollars. So you can't just go into your SallyMae.com and be like, oh, I want to pay with this check.
Dude, I hear so much horrible shit about Sally Mae at work because most of our guys are new and they just got out of school.
Yeah, and they're
all just like, Sally Mae, I owe him so much money. I'm like, well, that's what you get.
Yeah, when you get a checkbook in Canada, the routing system is different. You can't just type in a check into an American dollar formatted website and pay a bill. So, I couldn't pay half my bills. What I would have to do, it was, write a check to my mom, send it to her, and she'd have to cash it into my bank account in the States.
Oh,
and then I'd have to, it was a pain in the ass.
Because that's kind of what I figured. You have to go from one person to the next. Like from you to someone else.
Yeah, it created a middleman in
yes,
the situation.
Exactly.
I hate that because I had to depend on somebody, and I hate depending on people. I just like to be really independent, you know. And
I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, I get upset.
I don't want my mom to be responsible for cashing checks for money that I owe.
There's no reason.
Because it inconveniences her, and you know.
There should be a service like that we don't know about that exists probably. But it takes 10%.
Some website, but I wouldn't trust it anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was that, and then there was work visa stuff because Canada doesn't want to give a job to an American if it could give a job to a Canadian. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
So
I've actually helped some people get here by doing
you have to apply for
and stuff.
Yeah, and you have to have an offer letter and a you have to have a diploma or something like that. Like I had to, they told me to bring my diploma that I got from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And have it at the border. So a fucking
at the border,
driving over the border and going through customs, and I'm sitting here with my diploma and my permits and stuff, and what's that? And I was like, it's my diploma. What the fuck do you have that for? And I was like, I was told that someone would want to look at this, and they're like, no, we don't fucking care about that. And
do you
it's
have
weird.
fruits
At the border,
and vegetables and drugs and stuff?
Yeah, at the border, the border
Guns.
guards. I swear to God, Canada and U.S. have contests to see who could be the bigger asshole.
It seems like if you're coming from Canada,
at the Detroit border, that's how it is. Every time I went into Canada, I got a dick. Every time I came out, I got an even worse dick, and that was on the American side. If
you're coming from Canada, you're probably a good guy. If you're going from the U.S. to Canada, you're trying to escape from something.
The draft.
The draft dodger. I went there one time. I went to Vancouver. It was cool.
Oh, I've never been. I heard it's great.
I saw two bums get in a fight in the middle of an intersection where cars were driving.
Well, that happens in a lot of places.
So it was pretty sweet. Because the bums out here in Denver, they're just too nice. They don't fight.
Yeah, Denver was a great city. I really liked it. One thing about relocating though is you want to know if you're going to a city, you need to know that you're compatible for city life. And it's one of those things where if you're coming from the countryside and you're moving into a city, there's a lot of common sense things that, I guess they wouldn't be common sense. They're things that you really wouldn't think would be an issue.
There's a different way of thinking everywhere you go, based on reactions to the way people act in a certain environment.
The cultural differences.
That's difficult to explain because it depends on exactly where you're going.
Yeah.
Not just the city, but the block. A block can make a difference.
Yeah, a city, one block in a city composed compared to another block that's a really bad neighborhood.
It's here's the block where they sell all the drugs, and then here's the block where everybody's rich.
Yeah, you need to get a good feel for the place you're planning on going to.
It can be that transparent.
Really, for a really long time, I wanted to get a job in California, just because I knew that California was kind of in line with
they
where I imagined
the
that
party.
I'd like to be. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Denver is just good. Shit that's better, that's legal in those areas that aren't legal.
Oh,
yeah. And and it's you kind of target where you want your job to be.
The first time I came out here, I saw those mountains, and I was like, oh, this is home. Look at those mountains.
Yeah, the mountains in Denver are gorgeous.
And then all the other wonderful things kicked in after living here for a few years, and I'm like, oh, that's why I should also be here.
Yeah, dude, Denver's a shit. I got some good friends out there.
Look, if you like winter sports, got all those mountains. If you like summer sports, it's perfect.
So, that's pretty much my life in the industry so far. I'm still relatively new, starting out, I guess.
Yeah.
I think.
You've managed to, like I said, you came in right by doing, you came in really technical, pretty smart guy. You made some decisions to go to a lot of good companies, and that's going to help you in the long run a lot. Like I said, you definitely sacrificed by going. Wolf Id was a bit of a sacrifice in the sense that it wasn't a long-term stable job. However, that risk that you took was a huge risk of a high reward. of having rage in your resume, being able to work with such great people, a little bit of Doom 4 action. I mean, that's really what it is. When it comes to picking a job, it's risk and reward.
Exactly.
I mean,
and honestly, I never would have thought that.
You would have never thought it was a high risk job, but
yeah.
it's the way of the games, man. The way of the
I
industry.
even asked. I was like, there's 3 effects artists. Am I going to get laid off after this project? And I'm like, no. It's never laid anyone off before.
Never.
And I was like, all right.
Well, that's how Mythic was. Mythic was a family company that never fired anybody. So if you were just terrible, they found another position for you. Like, you work on the forums or something.
And it's not even that like the company is being disingenuous. They find shit happens, and that's
really all there is to it. Look, there are evil people out there in the industry that are here just like, we'll make these terrible decisions and just bring the stock down and make money off of it. But most people just want to make games, and they want everybody to be happy and make money and blah blah blah.
Yeah. That's how it is. But the industry is complex, small, though.
Very small.
Networking is definitely a key thing, and I always say that to people. So what shit have you been working on? You said you were working on you said you were working on a project or something in your spare time.
Well, I'm always doing stuff on my spare time. I've got a lot of things like I'm always following the latest UDK releases and trying to learn all those new DX11 features. What I can in my own time. Like, that's what I do. And at work, obviously, we're working at Alphonic on the game Nexus, which will be on the house party for Xbox Arcade on the live, and you buy it on the internet with all these other great games.
I want to ask you, how is that? You guys are mainly just developing for Xbox Live Arcade now, aren't you? Or except for the one.
It's also on the PSN. It's also on Steam.
Yeah, that's on. Yeah, so it's you don't have to worry about a publisher at that point because you're putting it out yourself, right?
Well, we've got THQ is publishing us.
Oh, okay.
So they're
So are they really necessary in that process? If you guys are making the game and you're putting it on Steam, PSN, and XBLA, why do you need a publisher? Why can't you just get certified and then send your shit over there?
There's a lot more to making video games, particularly on the console, than people are ready to accept.
Do you care to elaborate on that?
I'm going to try and elaborate on that without saying too much. One of the major things about getting your game out on a console is certification. If say you're making a game, you're working on a game.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit standards that you have to meet.
Yes, if you're working on a game, you're making this game. You're like, oh, this game is cool, it's done. Let's just release it on the PC, yay! That's fine. But if the game isn't perfect, and I mean like severely tested,
quality control. Yeah.
Yes, isn't severely tested.
You can't have a buggy game coming out on Xbox Live.
It could get and like the thing is, if you put out a game on the PC and it gets some bad reviews because the game's fine, it's cool, but you've got some bugs, so you're getting some negative. You're getting some negative press. To start, it's unless you're just throwing money at somebody, that's not going to show up on a console because it's already got a bad start. It's the first impression thing. So you've got to get some like hardcore testing, making certification, getting QA, get this stuff right. And as for me, I'm an artist, so a lot of it's really out of my hands.
So THQ just takes care of all that shit.
They help. We test as well. We test internally. They're good at helping with marketing, having a publisher gets you through doors.
But then you have to pay them a lot of money.
Sure. There's going to be money involved there. But they're helping you get through doors that you never know. You could be doing some game that you release it and it's okay, but then nobody gives a shit because some PC release or no one got it out there. But you made your money back or whatever. Okay, on the other hand, you sign up some major publisher, you don't really make... Maybe they get more money off of it, But now you've got a game that's in front of more people's eyes and considered highly professional because you've got a major publisher behind you. So therefore your company is worth more money in the long run versus the quick, I don't know what you want to call it, the idea that you can get your game out right now, or you could wait, spend more time on it, spend more money on it, and make less money, but in the long run your company grows. It's
I get
it's
that.
one of those things.
It's just instead of cashing in immediately, it's a long-term thing.
It's
relationship building. It's an investment almost.
It is an investment in yourself that you have to be able to take. Just making a game is a huge investment, but then you have to be ready for that next level shit. And if you're not ready for that next level shit, then unless you just really make some amazing game that came out well, then it's just so difficult. That's really the only thing is it's just so difficult, and there's so many politics, and there's so many things behind it, and so many people that want to get involved in your project. I don't even know how to put it into words. I cannot articulate the difficulties until someone gets through the process. It's like, okay, I released a PC game, great, that's cool. Now, another guy who released console games clearly has a different level of experience that they could bring to a project just because they've dealt with certification, they've dealt with high-level QA. They've dealt with the fact that limited number of slots and specific release times based on quarter numbers. And so I don't even know how to explain all this crap. But that's just some high-level shit that unless you've been there...
Yeah, it's experience stuff.
It's total experience stuff.
That's important to have. I never finished the project. I wasn't there for the end results of Darkness 2, so I never really got into the whole certification stuff. I remember that was a big thing I did. So they're always talking about certification.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the first time I really learned a lot about that. I guess I never really put two and two together on the amount of resources it takes to get a game to that polish level.
And it takes a lot of money, too. We're talking about...
Yeah, because you got to pay testers.
Going through certification and all that stuff, we're talking $100K plus. I don't even know. I'm just making that number up.
Look at a game like Skyrim. ZeniMax and Bethesda probably have a huge QA department, quality assurance, those are testers, and they probably spent a shit ton on that game. And there are still bugs.
Tons of bugs. But that's a huge
there are
game.
always going to be bugs because a game that big with that much script and all that complexity isn't going to be perfect like that. Never will be because there's so many different variables.
Nexus is a small game. It has 9 maps. It's a first-person shooter, and it has a lot of complexity with the mutators and stuff. But there's so many little bugs that you'll never run into with QA. They will only happen when the consumer gets a hold of this game and they start taking advantage of features or combinations of features that no one in QA could have.
People who are looking to exploit the game.
It's the idea
because that's what QA guys do.
Yeah, it's the idea of what is it, like an infinite number of monkeys typing on typewriters over an infinite amount of times could eventually type Shakespeare's work. The idea is no matter how many testers we throw at it, it's not going to be as many people that actually buy and play the game.
Yeah, these bugs that come up are billion to one odds.
Exactly, and that's why patches happen, and people have to expect this. People say, "Oh, we're just beta testing the game." Duh, this stupid company. Nah, man. They just happen to be okay. There's 100 or 1,000 testers. Well, now there's 1 million people playing the game on a big game like a Skyrim. Millions of people are playing. So, and as soon as people find it, they put a YouTube video up showing how to exploit all this shit, and then everybody knows it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this game's got all these bugs. No, you couldn't have found that bug yourself, and you would have. There are a lot of games you can play through and never find a bug, or maybe it's a little one here and there. But when you have an unlimited number of people just going at it, and with the internet, shit.
Yeah, it's like a game is like a giant stack of cards, essentially.
Exactly.
It could come crumbling down in any second. That's always what it is, man.
So, how would you like to talk about any sort of technical stuff? Like, I know, like I said, you made a lot of shaders. You've been very technical guys. You like the UDKs.
Yeah, UDK is fucking in love with that, and that's one of the reasons I took that new job at Armature is they're using UDK to work on their next project.
Oh, snap.
And I jumped all over that because that's like a dream job to me is working within a tool set like that.
Well, it's a tool set that you know so well as well.
Yeah, I've been working with it since I was 13, so like I know it inside and out, like pretty much almost down to a scripting level, and I still need to do that. I need to learn the script more, but I'm sure I will at this new job.
You see?
Yeah, Unreal scripts.
I've never learned any of that, and I can make I've like released so many levels for this game.
Yeah, like that's so great about it is you can make such cool shit without touching any code. Like you just use Kismet or whatever, and it's all node based. But yeah, I do a lot of technical stuff. I guess one thing I really like is the ability to understand the way that the engine's working on a deeper level, understanding the shader code, how like the general way that things are set up, and it enables you to think of anything pretty much. And because you have such a large knowledge base of how this particular set of software works, you could come up with interesting and innovative ways to do something. I mean, there's like 1,000 ways to do one thing in this art field, right? But
Absolutely.
There's only usually a couple ways to do it right and quick and efficiently, right? And what I like to do as a technical artist is kind of push those boundaries a little bit, see if we can get something looking really cool while still being able to run it on a computer or in real time at a decent frame rate.
You got to be able to run it. Like if you're working on a PC only, and you're not even giving a shit about stuff, but when you put that stuff on a console, man.
Yeah, PS3 sucks compared to what Xbox can do in terms of like rendering, but PS3 has way more computational power.
And either way, both of those things came out like 60 years ago.
Yeah, they're so outdated. My opinion is that consoles are really holding the graphics in a lot of games.
They're holding it back, yeah.
They're holding it way back.
It's absolutely true. I'm feeling that right now. We're working on the PC version of our game.
Yeah, I mean, UDK is upgrading to the hardware. You know, like DX11 comes out.
DX11.
On top of it.
Most people won't be on top of DX11 for quite some time because if you're into it now, you have to get a new card. Yeah, and as far as like all the consoles until the next console is released, you won't see any of these great things that DX11 is going to do.
Yeah, and the great thing about UDK is that they implement all that stuff.
Yeah, they've got it like month to month. They release a new build. It has like, hey, look at this new feature.
And it's always amazing. It's always they test their build. They have a great online community, and they just make their tools accessible. And that's what I love about them. And I think that's why Epic has been so successful. Not only do they make awesome games, but they release awesome tools as well. The
fact that they are monthly releasing probably the highest level tool that's out there.
Yeah, I mean,
CryEngine 3 is also out, and it's also amazing. But what they're doing with UDK, that monthly release of all these new features all the time, it's like that's just, and they've got it down. They've been doing it since, when did that first start? In 2010 at some point? They started, or 2009 did they start releasing UDK?
November or something like that.
Either way, they've been at it for so long.
Yeah, I flipped out because before that, you only had the Unreal Tournament one. Like that's it.
Yeah, like UT3.
Yeah,
you get the collector set that has the bonus DVD that has like the guys explaining how to use the editor really well. Great DVD, and I still suggest it because it's useful information. It's still practical today. But after that, man, UDK came out and it was like, what?
Yeah, they didn't even have like light they didn't even have light mask back then. Like what they're doing is they're incorporating all these third-party companies into their software. Like not a lot of people know this, but you could auto-generate levels of detail for your static meshes. And what a level of detail is, for people who don't know, it's
you put the model in, and it's this many polys, and it needs to be chopped down.
Yeah, it just
run
needs,
better.
It's a lower detail
automatic
mesh. Now. It gets replaced on distance. So you know, if this high detail mesh is only taking up 10% of the screen, you don't need all that detail, so it'll reduce a level of detail. It'll make it easier to render it. And,
there's only so many pixels on a screen. If it doesn't affect the silhouette, it should be gone.
Yeah, exactly. And we used to have to do that by hand. We'd have to make like 3 versions of a model. And now UDK has there's this new software in there in the static mesh editor that has like a logo. There's like a logo there. It says like, oh, this is some random, like Havoc. Havoc is like its own thing.
They took up Scaleform for their UI.
Yeah, and Scaleform was a different thing.
SpeedTree for all their crazy trees.
Yeah, they have all these like third-party apps that go with the editor that no one even really uses, like SpeedTree, like Havoc Physics, and now they're working with NVIDIA on the Apex stuff, which is fucking crazy cool. That you could download an authoring tool and actually, which plugs into, which is a standalone program, and you load an FBX into it, and you can actually break it apart like it's going to fracture in the game, and it exports that out in an XML format, and then that's what you import into UDK. And there's a piece of software in the editor that will actually handle that. So when you shoot at it, it'll chunk off. It'll like break apart like it does in Star Wars and
I've seen that.
And all these other games.
Great.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They have examples?
Yeah, there's crazy. You could like do wood splintering and all that stuff. And what's even cooler about it is it works with scripts. So like I can, like if I want to break apart have a cinematic scene like 2012 where like a bunch of shit breaks, like I could do that with Matinee. Like I could release a physics object and have the entire sequence physics driven. It's really cool what you can do with the software. And I think that it empowers you when you know what there is to do, like what you can.
Well, as an artist, if you know let's just go on the most basic level, building a material. As an artist, if you know, or at least have an understanding of how to create a material, you can do. A lot of people there, I see them working on a scene. They've got they dropped a diffuse in there. It's a texture just plugged right into diffuse slot. They got a spec plugged right in the spec slot. They got norms plugged right in the norm slot. But there's so many amazing examples that already exist in the UDK engine. Just find a shader that's already there. Use that as an example to learn. Or there's so many tutorials on how to build a material. You've made a master material tutorial. I've made a master material tutorial. So many people have done these just because they're like, hey, here's the things that I like to do when I make a new material. I want it to have all these little features, so I want to change the spec color of a parameter. I want rim lighting and Fresnel. I want a cube map and reflections. I want detail normal maps. I want all this other little shit. Yeah. And if you don't know how to set that up, that's the difficulty. It's so open that you can just drop a material in and say, there it is, done. Like, just plug my texture in. I don't want to do anything else. Or you can just build this incredible shader nodes that's not only you could go crazy with detail and just fudge it, or you could be awesome with your efficiency and show off this higher level of skill. That's your shader is amazing, but it's also technically extremely tight, like the low number of instructions it could run on some console or whatever.
Yeah, a shader is essentially a program that tells the computer how to color the model.
Like every feature in UD or Unreal UDK has those features. Like you can set up post-processing chains that are ridiculously awesome, or particles that are odd. But you don't have to. You could do simple stuff, and it also looks good. That's the power of these engines.
Shaders can only amplify your work, I think. I mean, they don't ever really make your work bad. Like, the more you know about shaders, the better your scene can be. The more variation you can get. Say you want to have like a cartoony look, well, you could write a shader that make it look cartoony. So knowing that kind of stuff is very important.
And just adding a black border to something is bullshit. I'm just throwing it out there. As someone that knows advanced shaders, I get so pissed off when I see somebody just throw a black border. That's not how it works.
You're talking about what the hell is it called? Something outlines.
Oh,
shit.
yeah.
Like it's not cell shaded, but it's actually doing a depth
People have
test.
like a black outline around something.
Yeah, it's like a depth test.
The point of a toon shader, you should watch old Looney Tunes, old Charles Schultz cartoons.
There's
Merry
a line
Melodies,
around
to understand why characters have a certain particular type of border. It's not black for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I did something similar to that when I was working on this one scene I've been working on for like a year. In the early stages of development, I put a black background on it, but I did something a little bit different. I kind of copied what they're doing in The Darkness 2. They have that border around everything, but instead of it being black, what it does is it samples.
Yes, here we go.
It samples the pixels, the color of the pixels that
samples
it's
the pixels,
on.
exactly.
And it changes the color of the outline so that it's not a black outline, but it's actually like a more bold color or a darker color of what that.
Like I said, if you watch the old Looney Tunes, even Bugs Bunny was surrounded by like a gray for part of his fur, or a lighter color.
It wasn't black.
Yeah, like Daffy Duck had solid black for his main body because his body was black, but his legs had an orange. He had orange around his legs.
And towards his feathers and shit, it was white outline.
Yes, every color. It was highly varied because this is how animation art actually fucking works. I'm just saying, it's one of those things that people abuse and it pisses me off. It's like, oh, I'm going to just throw this diffusing crazy bump. That's something that pisses people off.
Crazy bump. Dude, the worst is seeing like students who get a hold of ZBrush and like the abominations that come out of ZBrush.
Like a few basic large shapes and then high frequency detail.
It's just like super blobby high frequency.
Garbage. Yeah. It's just garbage. Useless garbage.
It's really bad.
I'm saying it right now.
But it's always fun to see.
I just want to throw this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there before that. The CrunchCast thread on Polycount has gotten a lot of replies from the last one, and we're not really focusing on any of those questions, and that's unfortunate, but that's just because, this is just like a one-on-one new introduction to our young man, Ryan James Smith. And normally these types of episodes don't really have the time to jump into a lot of questions. However, what I wanted to lead you into is, do you still have UDK up?
Yeah, I do, actually.
You were talking about we're doing a little screen sharing at some point, and feeling like talking about anything that you want to, as in either a scene you're working on or something technical.
Yeah, this will be good because I actually haven't shown off too many screenshots of this particular scene in the past couple months.
Now,
to the forums at least, I've been showing pictures on the IRC chat, so a couple of the guys probably have seen it before. And I think I actually did some posting in some Weibo threads, but this will be more up to date, better, just a better representation.
Now, obviously, you're not going to get the best quality out of this because this video is going to be compressed. It's going to be on YouTube, and also we have. I would say there's a lot more listeners that just listen to the audio, the MP3. So as you display it, feel free to embellish, explain the scene visually a bit more. You know what I mean? Like a bit more than just, I'm just looking at this scene and I'm going to rotate the screen here, and if you look at this here, actually say what you're doing. I think that would help.
What I'll do is I'll go into, I'll show the scene what it looks like now in UDK, and I'll talk a little bit about my workflow, and I'll pull up my max work scene. And I'll just describe my process and just I guess how I go about constructing stuff and kind of like what I started out with. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and do this right now.
So as far as anybody watching the video, I'm gonna make him the full screen guy here if I can, and bam! I think I did it. Kinda.
Alright, so I'll just go ahead and switch over to my share screen, and this might crash because it did earlier.
Yeah, if this does crash, we'll just restart it here in a minute.
Alright, so let's go ahead and share the desktop. Oh no, I could actually share the program that I'm in. This is nice.
You can do that.
So I can just share selected window, and this might actually work a little bit better.
Yeah, and again, there's going to be a quality issue, but that's not something we're going to worry about.
It looks like the screen's going black when I stop the camera there, so hold on 1 second.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. It is going black.
It wasn't doing that earlier, so
just try sharing your desktop, because I think that works better.
Yeah, this is working.
Perfect.
All right, so yeah, this is...
and I'm going to let you talk about this, and I'm just going to run to the boys' room real quick.
Yeah, right on. So what we got here, this is my UDK work scene that I'm doing here, and it's a work in progress, because I've been working on it for the past couple... Actually, I've been working on one version of this or another for the past year, just on and off, and it's kind of like a big experiment on a certain type of way of blending textures and how far I could push certain technical things. And I'm calling it, I used to call it the pit because it was going to be a prison. But the more I did modeling for it, the more I realized is I didn't really have too much direction for it. And I was kind of modeling everything to fit into the scene instead of being modular and flexible. So what I did was I scrapped everything that I couldn't reuse, essentially, and I started the scene over with all these assets that I made. So I already had a huge library of textures, tiling textures that I made before, and I wanted to see what I could do modularly with just a few textures and not too many actual high poly to low poly unique models. So we'll go ahead and swoop through the scene here, and I'll just kind of show you some things here. Like these models right here, these pillars. These were like the first objects that I did, and at that time I really didn't have any direction to what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to do kind of like a desert palace type of Prince of Persia-ish color scheme kind of scene with a lot of sandstone and orange warm colors accented with some cool like blues and stuff like that. So I started modeling all this stuff and I put a big scene together. But what I was doing was I was only making unique models, and that was really putting me into a corner because I couldn't get the architectural variety that I wanted to in a quick enough iteration time. So I would work on something for like a week, and I wouldn't have much to show for it, and I wasn't getting too much return out of what I was doing. So I switched my direction to focus on just modeling pieces that I didn't need to bake down, and focusing more on tiling textures and just designing really interesting ways on breaking up those tiling textures so that I could get more use out of them. So, for instance, something like this column here has a special shader on that I made, which I call an entropy shader. And it's just doing some fancy tricks where it'll actually add age and break up the brick in the texture based on vertex paint. So I could actually come in here and paint a value onto each vertex that's in the model, and that'll change a property or a parameter in the shader. So if I want to give this surface like a more old and cracked up look, I could paint that on there just like that. And I can do that all over the shader and just kind of break that texture up. And I even have a secondary layer that has even more damage.
Holy shit.
Even more variation. And it all updates with the what's called parallax map, so it has a very 3D feel and a really nice depth to the brick. So as the camera updates, it'll see the lower part of the brick, and if it's viewing from the top, it'll see the upper part, but you can't see the bottom part. And it all looks very convincing and very real.
Yeah, so basically what we're seeing here is like the clean brick that you started with becomes a bit more damaged, and then the second layer gets even more damaged, and that it adds this depth that's being beat into the bricks, and you actually see this depth. Yeah,
with nothing on it, looks like that. Just looks clean.
Totally flat. Nice, clean brick.
It's got a clean normal map and a nice texture on it, but you could tell that it tiles. There's nothing really.
Yeah, one of the major smoke and mirrors that we fight in video games as artists is breaking tiling. Now the general thing is you try to paint your textures as good as possible so there isn't any noticeable tiling to begin with. However, the technology that as shaders improve seems to be focusing a lot more on removing tiling and generally getting accurate reflections, because everything in the real world has a reflection, be it extremely subtle to like almost nothing at all to a full mirror. These are both very, as far as processing goes, reflections very expensive. Tiling, getting custom textures or its custom appearance everywhere, very important.
Yeah, like you when you make a shader, you have to understand the physics of light and how they interact with surfaces in the real world. And you need to know the mathematics behind it and how it behaves in order to construct realistic shader models.
Right.
And, for instance, something's going to have what we call a specularity. That's what we call kind of like a reflection. It's essentially the reflectivity of a surface is what its specularity is. But in games, we can't reflect everything around the scene, or it won't run quick at all. So what we do is we just fake it with whatever real light source is lighting that scene, instead of having it render the reflections from everything around it. And of course, this is changing now with DirectX 11. You can actually place actors in the scene that are a low detail representation of, what that texture would be reflecting. And you can see a lot of how this works in the Samaritan demo that UDK put out a while back that showcases the DirectX 11 stuff. Excuse me. And that's kind of like what I've got going on here. If you notice, there's a reflection from the windows on this tile here, and all that is just an actor that I've placed in the scene. It's actually an ellipsoid, like a cylindrical type of actor. It's not a perfect silhouette of the window, but I don't need it to be because it sells the purpose. But the cool thing about it is I've done something very similar to this brick that I've done on this floor here, but I've also blended in the ability to blend in another texture on top of that. So I can come in here and break up the surface of this a little bit, and you'll notice that
it's
that
like a
image
more
based
beat up,
yeah,
dirtier,
it's just
like,
a more beat up.
Yeah, more worn
you can tell
version.
by the reflection of the window as I do this.
Yeah.
And the reflection is being blown out right now. This isn't exactly as realistic as it should be. There really shouldn't be much of a reflection at all on these, but I like to blow it out and exaggerate it anyways, because that's just fuck you. That's what I want to do.
Subtle details aren't noticed.
Yeah, I mean I like to call it like Jerry Bruckheimer, or Michael Baying it up,
like a movie. Everything's
just over the fucking top.
Yeah.
So I could break up that, and I could also paint in stand to break up the tiling, just like that.
Yeah.
And seeing it come in is really cool. And on top of that, there's another thing that I can do, is I could soften the fall off and make it look like the sand is really kind of piling up there over time and getting a not necessarily a very sharp edge on the blend, but a very faded blend instead.
So for those about the benefit of video, you started with a nice, super clean kind of floor tile. It's got the reflection of the windows in the background. You were able to paint in a transition to a more beat up, dirty version of that texture, which kind of distorted the reflections quite a bit more. And then beyond that, you're able to paint in a sand on top of that, which pretty much negates all reflection. And the sand is a sand material. There's not a lot of reflection. It's a bunch of dirt on the floor. And you're also able to control the opacity around the edges, or like how thick it appears. So it's like it blends in very naturally.
Yeah, just simple stuff like that you just take into account when you're making a shader is very, very cool. And the other neat thing is, because I used a master material, in most of the props in the scene are using that master material, I could go in and make changes to that, and it'll
update all around the board.
Yeah, it'll
one of the great things UDK has, and other engines have this as well. Once you've made, you should just really make a few main materials for a scene, and these materials have parameters in them, which you can set up to use as a material instances or material instance constant. Is that right? And these just you change out the diffuse and the spec and the normal, whatever materials you've actually made for it. And there's a few parameters that you can do, like colors, or the basic things are like spec color or diffuse color, but then you can get really detailed in there of like normal detail strength and reflection, all kinds of crazy parameters.
It's very complicated, and
it's as complicated as you want to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can make it simple, or you can make it really crazy. And the crazier you also want to make sure that it runs too.
Right. It's got to be right for your project. There's I just want to clear the air real quick. You've done a lot of tutorials. I've done a lot of tutorials. You can check out those on both of our websites: RyanJamesSmith.carbonmade.com, ChrisHolden.net. But just because our master materials tell you, hey, look, here's some things you can do, it might not be right for your project. It's just saying, hey, here's some things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is personal, so I don't really have to worry about it running on PS3, But so even under shader complexity, I've got, it's like dark. It's getting towards the the I'm pushing it area.
Yeah.
Mostly, and that's mostly because I haven't rebuilt the lighting, and there's a lot of dynamic lighting touching. Every time dynamic light touches a material, pretty much.
And some could argue that because of your technical level and the fact that you want to use this as an example of a bunch of features, it could be shader fetishism.
Yeah, like I do want to release it and just let people kind of pick away at it and see what I did. That's always kind of been the goal.
I think that's important. I think that's really just giving people examples of features is the best thing anyone could do for an engine.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like this is just kind of like what I've been doing recently. And another thing I've been experimenting with is modularity. So let's take a look at some of these individual models here. I mean, like here is just like one modular piece. Like it's just Legos, like this is an archway with a floor on it, and then it fits in with this archway and these pillars.
Yeah. And
everything is just kind of like modeled in chunks, in Max, and then brought in here like Lego pieces. And that's just kind of how it works. And I can
just kind of an audio explanation. Basically, one of his pieces was a flat floor and a flat wall that was arch shaped at the base of the wall, and so that would fit. And then he had his archway, which is just the arch itself, just what the curved pieces on both sides, and the pillar above that, which is one solid piece. Floor pieces are just broken up. There's edge pieces that just
I could go into wireframe mode here and probably get a better idea.
I just mean explaining it for people that aren't watching.
Oh yeah, here, like for people who are watching, like just to get another cool view here, I'll go show mesh edges. All right, so now you could see the like wireframe mode, kind of like in Max, and all these they're just pieces that snap to the grid.
Yeah. It's basically what this piece looks like is a lot like puzzle pieces. Like it's just like he had a box, and then he cut out one side of it, and then one side is a puzzle piece side, and the other side just fits into all the other boxes. That's really the idea. I mean, it sounds like you're oversimplifying. It's like just look at this box. You just cut it, you put it up against this box, but really that's what it is. You're making these shapes that are specifically designed on a grid to connect to other pieces, and it helps so much if you can keep them on these basic grid lines, and then from there you're working within you're being creative within that technical limitation of modularity, and the idea is to hide the fact that it's modular.
Yeah, you want to making it modular also makes it extremely quick too.
Yeah, I mean we're talking about his performance here, folks.
Yeah, if
everything was custom,
yeah, you'd have to change everything if you wanted to make a change in your scene. If everything's modular, you could just it's like Legos. You can build whatever the fuck you want.
Adjust one small piece. I have in plenty of projects, accepted that fact that this piece is a big, unique piece, like a castle or something that has a castle that has an exterior and an interior, and it's always like one big mesh. And that's pretty brutal. But if you're just going in there in Unreal and saying, I just got to adjust this one little guy over here, that's kind of nice.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much the UDK scene, and let me turn on real time here, and you can see, like, there's some other cool atmospheric stuff in here. There's a lot of dust kind of floating around. I don't know if you could see that too well on the capture.
Yeah, the frame rate right now is going to be pretty low, but I can kind of see what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to bother with that.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and pull up Max and show my hide all this stuff.
Your personal pictures of yourself?
Yeah. I'm on my webpage at all times. So this is actually my Max scene here. Let me just pull that up.
Hey, there it is.
Switch it to shaded so I could actually get a decent frame rate.
It looks to me like you're making some kind of bazaar.
A bazaar. But I have the way I work is I pretty much do 1-to-1 in UDK. So I know where everything is. And
this is one of the nice things about Max UDK is the units are 1-to-1.
Yeah, pretty much the same. So like I could go ahead and build a bunch of stuff in Max and get a good idea of what it looks like before I even bring it in the scene. And over here on the left I have like a large array of Lego pieces that I could draw from. And most of what I've been doing I've just been using tiling textures. I haven't even really been doing any kind of actual real modeling. I just started doing more of that with these cloth pieces for these Bazaar booths that I want to have. I've actually just been going in and doing cloth sims, and kind of caught me right in the middle of making these low polys for it.
Especially this Max scene looks like every single thing in the level laid out nicely on a grid, but different sections are spaced equally apart. Like when the main Max scene here looks like the level the level is laid out, but then there's sections of it which are pulled outside of that, which have individual prop sections.
Yeah, so like I have like this prop section.
You're mostly setting this up in like layers in Max, right? And normally you're working just with those layers on, but he just opened it all up so everybody can see everything.
Yeah,
and that's just showing off. Yeah, isolation, select and isolate. I do that all the time. That's like my main thing. I'm so big into isolating that I forget to use layers sometimes.
Again, I guess I could talk about like just some kind of cool like workflow techniques that I found pretty useful for recently. So I hand painted this wood texture, and I'm really happy with how it came out. I'm not really too much of a hand painting artist, but one thing I just wanted to get a wood texture that actually can work like real wood, like it has wood ends on it, and honestly, these are the same 4 pieces of wood, just different dimensions. With some modularity built in. Like this one's mirrored down the center so I can get longer board while maintaining a consistent texture resolution and all that jazz. I think I'm actually upside down. And I have other stuff on it as well. But when I make these textures, what I like to do is I texture to the grid. So if I drag out a plane and set it to 256 by 256, which is like a square, I can drop my material that I'm going to be working with, in this case it would be this wood material right here, onto that plane. So I have a visual representation of the texture I just made on a 3D plane in Max, and it's already, all the UVs are pretty much already laid out at this point. But all I really have to do now is convert that. Before I even convert to an editable poly, I could set up cuts in the texture the way I want to without even really doing anything. So right off the bat, I have 4 segments. This is something I
do all the time. I throw down a plane and throw when you're on a project where you actually got to think about your textures, and you're an environment artist. A lot of the times you're making what we call trim sheets.
Yeah.
There's also flat textures like a big brick or whatever. So that's your solid texture. That's the roof tile, whatever. But trim sheets, which is like this right here, is this a bunch of boards and ends.
Here, I'll show. I have a trim piece. I'll pull one out right now.
Pull it out, Ryan.
I'm gonna whip it out. A specific texture that I made just for trim, right there.
Yeah, that is absolutely trim. Now, for those that don't have the benefit of video, what we're looking at here is something that's broken up. Now, the top, what is that? Is it 256 or what are we talking about?
This is I think it's a 10. You know what? I don't know what resolution I have it in the engine, but in the end, it'll probably be a 512 by 512, and let's say it's a 512.
So let's say it's a 512. So the top part is like a 128 horizontal tile of 128 or 64 actually, 64 bricks, like 64 by 64 size, circular stone pattern. Below that would be like a 32 tall by 128 wide.
Yeah.
Trim of like a small marble tile. Below that we got a strip of wood. Below that we've got some horizontal trims of wood. Below that we got some stones and some more stones. Yeah.
Yeah, just different stone variations.
It's just horizontal. Colors. Yeah, horizontal.
So like if I wanted to cut, like I have a lot of like a section where I have I think 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16 small vertical bricks in a row. And if I wanted to isolate all those or pull those out of this model, all I have to do is add 15 subdivisions.
In Max, you're just adjusting the connections. Yeah.
And then I can just I could add enough geometry where it'll perfectly line up with the borders of this trim, and I could just what's the tool, detach it from the mesh, and I'll have a base mesh that's already UV'd perfectly.
Exactly.
So I do that.
I do it so much it almost makes me kind of laugh watching you like throw down the plane and adjust the segments. Like,
and this is funny because
so much.
There's like
just adjusting segments so they line up just right, and then you cut those pieces out and make the whole scene out of it.
It's funny because there's really no one ever really tells you how to do this. Like it's something that a lot of people come to independently, and they just kind of You know what I mean? It's just something that
some
you
things
eventually, with
when
experience,
you're
you just
clicking
come
around,
to eventually.
you're working
like,
on, you're working on your
easier?
shit, and you just click around. All of a sudden, oh, look at what just this epiphany.
Yeah,
I can do this. And then you talk to the guy next to you at work, and you go, "Hey, you ever thought about doing this?" He goes, "Like, yeah, I do that all the time." Oh, Jesus! Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think you didn't know that.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works. This texture, it's got sections of it that would look more like a mesh unwrap. It's not really a tileable texture unless you do it the right way. Like if I isolate these boards, and I come into my main element mode and I turn on vertex snap, I can just copy that over like that, and boom, I've got the first part of a tiling texture right there. I can just keep copying this over and over again.
So it's like a 256 by 512. It's 4 boards straight down. You can copy that around the room. You got like a tiling floor.
Yeah, essentially.
Or you can rotate it up as a wall or as a ceiling, whatever. It's just boards, and you could take one of those boards and just plop it out, and you got boards. They're boards, people. You can put boards everywhere.
Another thing I like to do when I work is I like to have easy duplication of items in precise, like in a precise way, right? So, for instance, if I took this group, this Bazaar booth right here, and I wanted to see what it would look like with a bunch of them next to each other, I wrote this script that is called Quick Array, and it works better than Max's regular array tool, where you have to, it freezes the camera, and you have to turn on preview mode to see anything.
Yeah, and those who don't understand what array means, array is a tool that allows you to say, okay, I want 8 of this object spaced by this many units, and you could line up 8 in a row, whatever, like tanks or cars or trucks or people, whatever you model. It just lines them up in whatever way you want them to go in whatever direction. It's fun.
Yeah, so it's a pain in the ass sometimes, because if you want to just shift, click, and drag, it's really hard to get, unless you're using perfect snaps, it's really hard to get the direction you want to go.
Pixels or whatever.
And then you have to keep shift dragging or set the number you want, and sometimes it's really hard to get a good visual representation of what things will look like quickly. So I wrote this script called Quick Array, sorry, and what it does is you hit Control-Shift-A, that's what I binded it to, and it's just a more condensed version of that. And what it does is it lets you update and move the camera around at the same time. And you have some
fancy. Now, is this a script that's on your website or something?
No, I haven't released this yet.
Oh, when's this going to come out?
Well, it's done.
Tease everybody, please.
I just didn't know, if people would find it that useful or not, because it's something that I thought was more specific to my workflow. But as I'm showing it,
you know how it is. It's one of those things. People are like, "Wait a minute, I can do that too."
So you initiate the script and it works. And what I can do is I could set my axis. So on the Y positive here, I could set my offset distance with a slider, just like that.
Basically, those that can't see it, he's got basically an array tool that has all the options of Max's array for the most part, but it's updating in real time, and he's able to rotate around and look at it.
And it's quick.
Yeah, it's quick.
And it's more precise. It doesn't do 2-dimensional arrays; it only does single dimensions. But I did add a pretty cool feature in where you could choose exactly the distance you want. So if you want to offset to the grid, like you want to do 256 or 512, you could type that in. You could increase the clone number. And another thing that you can do is do it in local space or on both positive and negative. So if I check this button, it'll create array outwards. So I could pull back into 2, and it'll update and pull back into 1.
What this is doing is it's starting from the center, and it's cloning outwards. So for the center, it clones 1 to the left and to the right, and so it's one array becomes 3 instead of just 2, and then it goes out to 5 and so on. It's spreading out from a single point. That's cool.
There's only a couple options. I could choose whether I want it to be a copy, an instance, or a reference. And I just hit apply when I want it to be okay, and I hit cancel if I don't want it, and it just goes back to normal. And it's actually much faster than what you see on this video. It's just because I'm doing the recording, and I got UDK and ZBrush and all these programs open. It's running a bit slow right now.
The quality is not. Yeah, don't even worry about it.
But that's one thing I like to do to help improve my workflows, write scripts like that. And if people like that script and want me to release it, I'll be happy to throw it in my public Dropbox for you to grab. I do need to make a website though. But like I said, going back to the board thing, I just pull from the initial base texture right here, and I modeled these boards around that texture. So like I UV mapped it so the boards fit on one thing and the ends are on one. And when I build these booths, I just kind of pull from this stockpile of wood, realistic
boards,
wood dimensions, and I just kind of modularly put these boards together. So
well,
I build
if you look
everything.
at even games like Skyrim, which is running on consoles, the way they make most of their buildings, they're actually modeling in almost every board. Legit.
And it's all on a 512 by 512, and I can make a bunch of them, and I don't have to worry about baking anything out. Yeah. And I think I made all of these over the course of 2 days, cloth sims and all, and I'm almost done with them. And
I'm just going to throw this out there. While there is a limit, if you're like really just overdoing it and being an asshole, polygons don't really matter as much as draws, and what the screen is actually rendering.
Yeah, like if you have a lot of textures calls in your screen, it might slow it down.
Yeah, and you got a bunch of particles going off, and
I have
shaders.
A lot of textures early on in my scene. When I started making it, I was like, I don't really give a fuck, So let me just pull up in my I was gonna say, let me open my package.
Yeah, open your package.
That's good there. But I have a lot of textures.
And look at you, you're a beast.
Yeah, I have a lot here, and most of them are 1024s. And I'll probably just narrow them down later.
Yeah, but, when you're working on stuff, most of that doesn't matter. Like, pretty much everything I've done, I've made textures long enough to know that it doesn't really matter the size of the texture. It's like your frequencies of detail. You obviously have your far detail, your medium detail, and your high frequency detail. Like, I mean, if you're making a good texture, it doesn't really matter the size of it. You can scale it down; it's going to be fine.
If you're worried about the quality of your map or how it's going to run, or if it's running slow, there's debugging options that you could use in UDK. So if you go to console and you type stat game, you could pull up a list of what's called, fill rates, or how long it takes to compute and render out a bunch of different elements that the engine considers. And so like something that'll come up is world tick time and like Kismet time. And so it's just how long it's taking to render a certain aspect of the scene. And if you look at the averages here, like I could see that async work weight is running higher than, say, CG mark time, and like these are all pretty technical. But there's some other ones that you could do, like stat memory, and this is another really important one, where it brings up all the memory that's being used and how many megabytes total is being used in your scene. So, for instance, pixel shader memory, that's sitting at 116.84 megabytes. And that's a good chunk of change. That's probably more than you would want to at this stage in a project, because PS3 can only handle, like 700 some megabytes of memory, or it might even be less than that. And if I'm sitting at 116 already, that's more than 1/5 of my budget, or like 1/6 or something like that. But you could see what how much space certain aspects of your scene is taking up.
Oh, absolutely. I've worked on console projects before, and we're talking about you're in development working on something, and what might end up being the final thing running on a console is like the lowest level LOD. It's popping up pretty freaking fast. I mean, things are getting cut off really quick, especially on the console. This is going to a television screen, so there's a loss there of detail. A higher percentage of people don't even have that thing hooked up right, so they're not even looking at it in HD. So there's another huge bonus we got there as artists to take some shortcuts on.
Yeah,
but
we
no,
it's high fidelity.
It's very limited.
There used to be a tool where you could check your try count. You might want to help me out on this. It used to be right in the actor or the content browser. There used to be a statistics tab where you could see how many tries that you have. But I do not.
It's not right there in the content on like one of those tabs, because that is where it used to be.
I see content, actor classes, levels.
It was like statistics.
Scene, layer, and start page. That's all I see. I think they changed it out.
They probably did. That's the one thing that gets me, is every fucking time they release a new version of UDK, they've got to move shit around. It's like, come on, guys.
Browser windows. References, primitive stats. Here it is. I think it's primitive stats. Yeah.
That's what it would be, is primitive stats. That's what it was called previously. Where was that at?
It was in View.
View,
browser windows.
Browser windows, primitive stats. I'm actually opening up an old version of UDK from 2010 right now.
Yeah, I just added it to the thing.
You can drag it into it? Well, that's cool.
You just hit docking and then you hit docked instead of floating. And then, you could get a combined total and it says triangles, instance triangle. Like my instance, total triangles in memory are 44,000, so about 45,000, but instance triangles is 253, and that's, I guess, the number you really have to worry about is triangles, not instance triangles, because instance triangles is just taken care of by the video card, right? But what's actually being loaded up into memory is the triangles from your static meshes. So I think that's right, but yeah, it's pretty cool how you could track.
Oh, they have so many
stats.
statistics, man. And one of the things that's been cool about working with the CryEngine is they have so many crazy console commands. They have a console command for every stats you could imagine, and they're really easy to find because their little console thing pops up and it's really useful. Point is, having all these stats, you're like, man, you got the info. You're the god.
Yeah, it's definitely good to know what your platform is that you're going to aim for, so you know you could set a budget and you just don't throw 2048s on everything and think that that's going to be good. Like there's so many artists, student artists, who they'll model like a tank or something, and they'll do like a shitty texture for it, and they won't even bake it. They'll model it, they'll UV unwrap it, they'll throw a texture on it, and then they'll take it in a crazy bump. And they make like a 2048, and you're just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this does not look at all. But higher texture size does not always mean great looking prop.
I heard this joke at work. Here's what they call crazy bump. They call it lazy bump.
Lazy bump. I use it for some things, but I often don't use it for normal mapping.
It is a solid tool for professionals and people that really know what they're doing with it. But if you're just taking a diffuse and just dumping it in there and pulling out a normal with all this default shape recognition on it, and you're pulling out the spec and thinking this is going to work out, then
Yeah, you never use spec generator and crazy bump for spec ever.
There could be there's going to be there's going to be chances where it looks okay if you render everything else out right. But the point is, people that are professionals should know what they're looking at, and they see it and they go, "This is you have no command of normal maps because all your normal maps are your diffused put in crazy bumps, so therefore you do not qualify for this job."
Yeah,
that's really what it is.
Think that the normal map makes it the material. When it's really the diffuse that makes the material. It's the texture that makes the material, not the normal map. Normal maps can only. I still see it if you're. Is your camera going out?
No, it's just adjusting the one. Because, actually, yours needs to be rotated pretty far to your other left from earlier. But yeah, I mean, we could wrap this up at any point if you want to.
Yeah, we can.
I figured you were getting a little tired.
It's been like 2 hours.
We're right at that 2:30 mark. That is a huge show.
It's going to be like a Lord of the Rings, maybe a much more boring
Absolutely.
version of Lord of the Rings.
It's pretty awesome that just two guys could pull this off. Nah, you had a lot to cover. It's a good thing to have a good introduction episode where a guy can explain who he is, what he's about, what he's been through, and then actually go into what you're doing now as well as you did. So yeah. I think people will really appreciate the second half. The first half is dope for people that really want anecdotes and stories about what it's all about.
Yeah,
and the coveration of changing countries is good too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coveration.
Thanks for the aberration. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. Do it again if you want some other time. Yeah, feel free if you got something to talk about. Anything you really want to promote besides throwing out your website and your YouTubes? Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. I've been getting a lot of lot of exposure lately, which I'm kind of grateful for. One of my that when I leave, did you see that? You saw that TreeGen thing I did, right?
The what? The tree? What?
The tree. We're done recording now, right? Or are we still going?
Oh, it was still. I was just saying if you wanted to promote anything at the end of the show.
Well, if you guys want to check out, I always feel weird, like fucking.
Well,
giving myself
don't you do live streams at all? You did some live streams.
I used to. I don't really do this too much anymore. Yeah.
Because finding a way to like let people know when you're going to do those is great.
Yeah, I don't really do those too much anymore.
Right.
But I do have a blog now. It's called technicaleden.com. There's a hyphen between technical and Eden. .blogspot.com. So technical-eden.blogspot.com. And I just started in December, and there's a bunch of cool articles up there. No, not a bunch. There's a couple on just shit that I like that I haven't really felt like dumping into on a poly count specifically because this is kind of general or just more journal stuff. But I talk about some tiling textures and how to use those or cool ways to use those. I just put a blog up about gradient mapping and how that can be useful and getting variation and stuff like that. So I do have a blog now. I need to add it to my signature on Polycount so people can see that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's been a couple of news posts on the front page of some stuff that I've done. One being the tree generator script that I made.
Yeah, I saw that. That's actually the top of your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, that's my latest YouTube video, and it's more like a demo. And I don't even think I put the link on that. I should probably link it to where to get it. But if you go to polycount.com, it's still on the news page. It's just called TreeGen.
Yeah. Well, I've got all your like main links. It's going to be in the info to like the YouTube and Vimeo videos. So.
Oh, cool,
like
sweet.
Your website, your YouTube channel, and all that stuff. So.
Awesome.
Hopefully that should get people to these things.
Hopefully, yeah, and your
TreeGen is still on the main page. Holy shit! I'll put a link to that.
Feel free to, if anyone ever has any questions, feel free to email me. I try and get back to everybody. I do. Sometimes I might miss people. I do get sometimes I don't reply to everybody. But
you get a lot that comes in sometimes in a lot of different ways.
There's a lot of people who ask me for stuff that I've already talked about, and I'll just either ignore them or just send them a link. But
well, I had a comment on one of my YouTube videos. It was a tutorial video, and the comment was, "Oh, awesome! Can we get a tutorial?" And
it was a tutorial.
It was a tutorial video. Yeah.
Well, what I do is I do a lot of demos where I don't really tutorial anything. Like I'm like, hey, this is what I'm working on, and I get people who are like, hey, thanks for the tutorial. And I'm like, I didn't tell you how to do anything. I just showed you what I was doing. And
they're talking about another tutorial I did. Jeez.
I'm like, this is what I've been doing on this vertex blending, and they're like, cool tutorial, man. I'm like, you don't know how to do that. I didn't explain anything. But YouTube comments are always hilarious and unpredictable.
Oh yeah, they're the best. So yeah, you can. I'm putting all these links in. It's going to be great. I'll be sure to also tweet plenty of these links too, so people can figure out who you are. And but yeah, everybody knows who you are on Polycount. So you're already super famous. Big it. This guy made Rage by himself, single-handedly.
I did not. Made a lot of work on that. I did do most of the multiplayer effects other than the car explosions. This is Jeremy Mitchell is my lead, and he was a fucking amazing artist on Rage, and he's like a guru when it comes to all that technical stuff, and he's way more famous than I am and more knowledgeable. So I wish he had a website, but he doesn't. But he goes by Slum on the forum, so check him out too.
Yeah, if you're on Polycount, you don't know who Slum is. Who the hell are you?
I don't think I'd be anywhere where I am today unless I got some of the shit that he taught me. That guy's awesome. So I owe a lot of that to him, and then the other artists out there, you included.
Shucks.
Everyone who does and contributes in tutorials and how-tos and workflow and just takes the time to explain how they work. It really affects everybody and it affects the industry, and it brings us to the next level. And like
that's the idea, man.
If there's one thing, I just hope people keep doing what they're doing, and we're all standing on the shoulders of giants here, and that's one thing that I wanted to say is if it hasn't been for some of these other great artists, I wouldn't be here, and I just hope that we continue to keep giving back to everybody else. So,
in more of a direct sense, me and John Jones, the guy who's on here in the show all the time, but he's currently out of state. One thing that we always said is, if we let people know how we want them to be when we work with them, like the best thing that someone could be, like the idea of Your Portfolio Repels Jobs was, me and him had spent so much time in that hiring process where when you get like 100 or a dozen plus emails of job applications, if all the websites, over time you figure out which websites don't piss you off the most. And then the idea behind that article came from us just kind of bitching back and forth with each other, like, look, why does this site like this? And then we realized there's this basic set of rules. And that's kind of what tutorials are all about. You're just letting people know, look, here's these things that people are actually doing, that are actually working. Go for it. Here's how we did it. People should check out postmortems. Check out tutorials from professional developers.
Postmortems especially.
People that have experience and they're explaining the experience. It's not an issue of right or wrong. It's them saying, look, this is what happened to me. Here's what you can learn from that. Absolutely. Or not learn. The point is, go to these websites like crunchstudios.com and you watch these episodes of the CrunchCast and get Ryan James Smith to make you more tutorials and live streams, because that's what he's all about. And I think we should wrap this up.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna hit stop.